As the day begins to fade and the world outside softens into twilight, we invite you now to settle in. Allow your body to relax, to feel the quiet support beneath you, and to let your breath deepen, slowing gently with each passing moment. This is a time for stillness, for a tranquil journey into the distant echoes of the past. We will embark together on an extended contemplation of a life that reshaped a continent, a story woven into the very fabric of history. There will be no rush, no urgency, only the steady unfolding of events, presented with a quiet clarity. As the narrative progresses, let the gentle rhythm of the words guide you, like a calm current carrying you across a peaceful lake. The tale before us is one of immense scope spanning decades and vast landscapes. We will explore the origins of a figure known to history as Genghis Khan, tracing his path from the stark nomadic steppes of Mongolia to the establishment of an empire unlike any seen before. This exploration will be grounded in historical fact, observing the documented trajectory of his existence, without embellishment or dramatic flourish. Our purpose is to simply present the narrative, allowing the details to emerge at their own unhurried pace. Let the quiet contemplation of these historical movements offer a space for your mind to drift, to find a sense of ease. There is no need to grasp every detail, only to allow the flow of information to wash over you, like a soothing tide. Prepare to journey through time, carried by a voice that seeks only to inform and to accompany you into a state of deep relaxation. Let the ancient world unfold before you, not as a spectacle, but as a quiet, enduring presence. Breathe deeply once more and allow yourself to sink further into this moment of calm. The story is about to begin. Before we delve into the chronology of a life, let us first drift into the ancient land itself. Imagine the vast, undulating expanse of the Mongolian steppe, a landscape that stretches beyond the horizon in every direction, seemingly without end. It is a place of profound quiet, where the scale of nature dwarfs all human endeavour. Here, the sky is an immense, uninterrupted dome, an ever-changing canvas of deep blues by day, and an infinite tapestry of stars by night. Clouds drift slowly, casting vast, moving shadows that crawl across the grasslands like silent, gentle giants. The air itself carries a unique quality, crisp, clean, and often cool, even in the warmth of summer. A constant companion in this environment is the wind. It whispers across the open plains, a soft, persistent breath that carries the scent of wild grasses and distant earth. It rustles through the sparse vegetation, creating a subtle, rhythmic sound that can be both hypnotic and deeply calming. This wind has swept across these lands for millennia, carrying the dust of ages, shaping the contours of the terrain and touching every living thing. In this timeless space, the sense of scale is overwhelming. A lone rider, or a small herd of horses, appears as but a tiny speck against the grandeur of the surroundings. There are no towering mountains to block the view, only gentle hills that rise and fall like the slow swell of an ancient ocean. This unbroken vista fosters a unique perspective, a feeling of being intimately connected to the earth and the heavens. This silence of the steppe is not an emptiness, but a fullness, a deep, resonant quiet punctuated only by the calls of unseen birds, the rustle of dry grass, or the distant bleating of sheep. It is a silence that invites contemplation, that allows thoughts to expand and then gently dissipate, leaving behind a sense of profound peace. This is the cradle of our story, a place where time seems to move with a different rhythm, where the past feels ever present. This environment, with its vastness and its quietude, shaped the people who lived upon it, instilling in them a resilience and an understanding of the immense forces of nature. Let this image of the boundless steppe settle within your mind, a backdrop of enduring tranquility as we prepare to trace the beginnings of a notable historical figure. From within this immense silent landscape, a figure gradually emerges from the deep currents of history. His name, in the beginning, was Temujin. Before he became known by the title that would echo through centuries, he was simply a boy born into the challenging realities of nomadic life on the steppe. We approach this figure not with dramatic flourish, but with a quiet, considered attention, much like observing a distant star whose light has travelled across vast stretches of time to reach us. Temujin is a presence from long ago, a historical echo that resonates with the profound transformations he would set in motion. He's not a legend to be embellished, but a historical individual whose life, as recorded in the available chronicles, offers a compelling narrative. Our intention is to explore his journey with a gentle reverence for the historical record, acknowledging the limitations inherent in studying a distant past, yet drawing upon the most reliable accounts that have survived. We aim to present the known facts of his life, tracing his path from an obscure birth to a position of immense influence, without resorting to speculation or romanticized interpretation. His story is intricate, woven from the threads of tribal loyalties, betrayals, struggles for survival, and the relentless pursuit of unity in a fragmented world. It is a narrative that unfolds against the backdrop of the very steppe we have just contemplated, a land that demanded resilience, strategic thinking, and an intimate understanding of its rhythms. As we begin to uncover the layers of Temujin's early life, we will maintain a calm and observational stance, allowing the historical details to speak for themselves. There will be no undue emphasis on conflict, but rather a steady progression through the events that shaped him and, through him, profoundly altered the course of human history. This is an invitation to quietly witness the unfolding of a life that began in hardship and culminated in an empire. We will follow the documented trajectory of Temujin, allowing his presence to gently materialize from the mist of time, guided solely by the historical record. To truly understand the emergence of Temujin and the profound impact he would have, it is helpful to gently broaden our gaze, extending it beyond the immediate landscape of the steppe. We turn our attention to the wider world of the 12th century and the early years of the 13th, particularly across the vast expanse of Central Asia. This was a world characterized by a particular kind of order, or perhaps a particular kind of disarray, depending on one's perspective. It was a time defined by fragmentation, the lands stretching from the eastern edges of the steppe westward into the heart of the continent, and southward toward established empires, formed a mosaic of diverse peoples. Within this expansive territory, no single, overarching power held sway among the nomadic populations. Instead, the political landscape was composed of numerous tribes and confederations, each with its own leadership, its own traditions, and its own sphere of influence. These groups were often in a state of flux, their alliances shifting, their territories expanding or contracting with the fortunes of their leaders and the availability of resources. There was no central authority, no unifying structure that brought these disparate entities together. It was a world of independent bands, each navigating the harsh realities of the environment and the complex dynamics of intertribal relations. To the south and west lay powerful sedentary empires, often viewing the nomadic peoples with a mixture of apprehension and disdain. Yet these empires themselves were not always monolithic. They too experienced periods of internal division and external pressure. But on the steppe itself, among the various Mongol, Turkic, and other nomadic groups, the prevailing reality was one of decentralization. This was simply the way the world was structured in that time and place, or it was a historical reality, a prevailing condition rather than a judgment. This fragmented environment, with its constant interplay of independent groups, would become the crucible in which Temujin's life would unfold, and from which a unified force would eventually emerge. It provides the essential backdrop against which his early struggles and eventual ascendancy can be quietly observed. Within that fragmented 12th century world, the foundational unit of Mongolian society was the tribe. These were not simply collections of individuals, but intricate webs of kinship and loyalty, built upon a shared ancestry, whether real or perceived. Clans formed the bedrock of these tribes, groups of families tracing their lineage back to a common ancestor, providing a sense of identity and mutual obligation. This familial bond was paramount in dictating many aspects of an individual's life, from marriage prospects to shared responsibilities and collective defense. However, the nature of these tribal structures was not entirely rigid or immutable. Alliances between clans and even between larger tribal groups were a constant feature of life on the steppe. These connections could be forged through marriage, through shared military endeavours, or through economic necessity. But just as readily as they were formed, these alliances could dissolve, shifting with changes in leadership, disputes over grazing lands, or personal grievances. This fluidity meant that the political landscape was perpetually in motion, a complex tapestry of emerging and dissolving allegiances. At the very heart of this nomadic existence, providing its sustenance and shaping its culture, were the animals, particularly the horse. The pastoral nomadic lifestyle was not merely a choice, but a deeply ingrained way of life, dictated by the vast grasslands and the need to move herds to fresh pastures. Horses were indispensable, serving as transportation, as tools for herding, and as instruments of war. Their speed and endurance were unmatched, enabling the Mongols to traverse immense distances with remarkable swiftness, an advantage that would later prove pivotal. Beyond their practical utility, horses held a profound cultural significance. They were companions, symbols of status, and central to the identity of the steppe warrior. The ability to ride and care for horses was ingrained from childhood, a fundamental skill that connected every individual to the rhythm of their world. Sheep, goats, and cattle also formed vital components of their herds, providing milk, meat, wool, and hides, ensuring a degree of self-sufficiency in the often harsh environment. This deep connection to the land and its animals fostered a hardy, adaptable, and self-reliant people. Their shelters, the jurs or yurts, were designed for mobility, easily dismantled and reassembled as they followed their herds across the seasons. This constant movement, driven by the needs of their livestock, shaped their world-view, their resilience, and their tactical ingenuity. The horse, the herd, and the vast open spaces were not just elements of their life. They were the very foundation upon which Mongolian tribal society was built. The life on the steppe, for all its profound connection to nature and its cycles, was also one of inherent instability. It was a world where certainty was a rare commodity, and change was the only constant. The environment itself presented formidable challenges. Harsh winters, known as dzud, could decimate herds, bringing famine and hardship. Droughts in summer parched the pastures, forcing tribes to move further and more frequently in search of sustenance. These natural pressures often led to a precarious existence, where survival was a daily endeavour. Beyond the caprices of nature, human interaction added another layer of unpredictability. Intertribal raiding was a pervasive feature of life. This was not always large-scale warfare, but often smaller, opportunistic attacks aimed at seizing livestock, capturing women and children, or simply asserting dominance. Such raids were a brutal means of acquiring resources, of demonstrating strength, and of settling long-standing feuds. They created a perpetual atmosphere of tension and vigilance, where trust between groups was fragile and often fleeting. The struggle for resources was relentless. Access to good grazing lands, to water sources, and to trade routes was vital for the survival and prosperity of any tribal group. This competition often escalated into conflict, leading to skirmishes and battles that could shift the balance of power within the region. Dominance was not a fixed state, but something that had to be continually asserted and defended, often through displays of force. This ceaseless struggle for survival and supremacy formed the inescapable backdrop for Temujin's early life. He was born into a world where power was fluid, where allegiances were conditional, and where violence was an ever-present possibility. The harsh realities of the steppe, the environmental challenges, and the constant threat of intertribal conflict shaped the experiences of every individual. It was a crucible that forged resilience, cunning, and a deep understanding of the precarious nature of existence. For Temujin, these early observations and experiences would prove formative, laying the groundwork for the strategies he would later employ to navigate and ultimately master this tumultuous landscape. Within this landscape of constant movement and occasional conflict, Temujin was born. The precise date of his birth is not definitively known, but historical consensus places it around the year 1162. This event occurred near the Onon River, a region nestled within the Henti Mountains, a place of historical significance for the Mongol people. His birth was not marked by widespread celebration or prophecy, but rather by the quiet rhythms of nomadic life. He was given the name Temujin, a designation that carries a particular resonance. In the Mongol language, this name is often interpreted to mean of iron or blacksmith. Such a name hints at qualities of strength, resilience, and perhaps a capacity for shaping and forging, qualities that would indeed come to define his later life. It was a name that, in retrospect, seems to foreshadow the powerful and transformative figure he would become, capable of forging disparate tribes into a unified force. Temujin was born into the Borjigin clan, a lineage that, even in the fragmented and often chaotic world of the 12th century steppe, carried a certain historical weight. The Borjigin were not merely one among many nomadic groups. They traced their ancestry back through generations, claiming descent from a mythical figure known as Berta Chino, the Blue Wolf, and his mate, Goa Moral, the fallow doe. This legendary origin provided a deep cultural and spiritual foundation, connecting them to the very genesis of the Mongol people. While the exact historical veracity of every ancestral claim is subject to scholarly discussion, the perception of this lineage was significant. It provided a sense of identity and a degree of prestige that set the Borjigin apart from many other clans. They were understood to be of a noble or ancient stock, even if their actual power and influence fluctuated dramatically over time. This ancestry, while not guaranteeing power, offered a foundational narrative, as a story of belonging and potential leadership that was deeply embedded in the collective memory of the steppe tribes. Thus Temujin entered a world already rich with history and expectation, even as his immediate circumstances were far from grand. His birth, though seemingly humble, carried the quiet weight of generations and the symbolic power of a name destined for greatness. Temujin's father was Yesugei Bagatur, a figure of considerable importance within his immediate sphere of influence. The title Bagatur itself signifies a hero or a brave warrior, suggesting a man of proven courage and military prowess. Yesugei was not merely a tribal member, he was a chieftain, holding sway over a segment of the Mongol Borjigin clan and exercising a degree of authority over allied groups. His prominence was not absolute, nor did it extend across the entire steppe. Instead, Yesugei's influence was localized, rooted in his personal strength, his reputation as a warrior, and his ability to forge alliances and secure resources for his followers. In the fragmented world of the 12th century Mongols, such a leader was crucial for survival. He was responsible for protecting his people, negotiating with rivals, and ensuring their well-being in a harsh and often dangerous environment. Yasuge's actions and decisions directly impacted the lives of his family and his encampment. He was a man who understood the intricate balance of power on the steppe, where alliances could shift like the wind and enemies could emerge from any direction. His leadership was born of necessity, forged in the crucible of constant vigilance and strategic maneuvering, where he had achieved a notable feat by abducting Hoelun, Temujin's mother, from her Merkit fiancé. This act, while a testament to Yasuge's daring and strength, also sowed the seeds of future conflict, creating a lasting enmity with the Merkit tribe. Such actions were not uncommon in a society where tribal boundaries were often fluid, and the taking of women could be a sign of power and a source of new lineage. Yasuge's status as a chieftain provided Temujin with an initial, albeit fragile, advantage. It meant that Temujin was not born into complete obscurity. He was the son of a recognized leader, a man who commanded respect and possessed a following. This lineage, while bringing certain expectations and a potential claim to leadership, also positioned Temujin within a complex web of existing rivalries and ancient grudges. His father's life and actions directly contributed to the challenging circumstances that would soon define Temujin's early years. Temujin's earliest years unfolded amidst the rhythmic pulse of nomadic life, a continuous cycle of movement across the vast steppe. From his infancy, he would have been accustomed to the swaying motion of the cart, the scent of horses and felt, and the ever-changing panorama of grass and sky. These formative experiences instilled a deep connection to the land and its subtle signals, a silent language understood by all who lived upon it. His mother, Hoelun, played a profound role in shaping his understanding of survival and resilience. Having been abducted by Yasuge, she embodied a fierce determination, a quality essential for navigating the harsh realities of their existence. From her, Temujin would have absorbed lessons not through formal instruction, but through daily observation. He would have witnessed her resourcefulness in managing their household, her strength in times of hardship, and her unwavering commitment to her children. These were not abstract concepts, but living examples of fortitude. As the son of a chieftain, even a localized one, certain unspoken expectations were placed upon Temujin from a tender age. He was part of a lineage, an inheritor of a particular status, and this carried implicit responsibilities. While he was still a child, the weight of these expectations would have been subtle, perhaps manifesting in the way he was addressed, the tasks he was encouraged to observe, or the stories of ancestors he would have heard around the fire. He would have quietly observed the men of his father's encampment, their horsemanship, their hunting skills, their methods of resolving disputes. The quiet observations of a child in this environment were not idle. They were a continuous process of learning, absorbing the intricate social dynamics, the practical skills necessary for survival, and the unwritten codes of conduct that governed their world. The sounds of the steppe, the wind, the distant cries of animals, the murmurs of human voices, formed the backdrop to these early, impressionable years, laying a foundation of awareness and adaptability that would serve him in the challenging times ahead. The trajectory of Temujin's young life, though already challenging, was irrevocably altered by a sudden and tragic event. As was customary for a chieftain's son, Temujin, at the age of around 9, was being taken by his father, Yasuge, to seek a bride from another tribe. This journey was a step towards forging alliances and securing the future of their lineage, a common practice within the intricate web of tribal relations. During their return journey, Yasuge encountered a group of Tatars, a rival tribe with whom the Borjigin clan had a history of conflict. Custom dictated that hospitality be offered even to potential adversaries, and Yesugei accepted their invitation to share a meal. Unbeknownst to him, the Tatars, harbouring deep-seated resentments from past encounters, had poisoned the food. This act of treachery was a silent, insidious weapon, far more subtle than any arrow or spear. Yesugei felt the effects of the poison soon after departing from the Tatar camp. The illness progressed rapidly, a sudden onset of debilitating sickness that quickly drained his strength. He understood the gravity of his condition, and with his remaining energy, urged his companions to hasten their return to his family. The journey back would have been agonizing, a race against the dwindling spark of life within him. His death was swift and irreversible upon reaching his encampment. For Temujin, who was still a child, this moment would have been a profound shock. The sudden absence of his father, the strong and protective chieftain, created an immediate and devastating void. The man who had been the pillar of their family, the source of their protection and influence, was gone. The loss of Yesugei was not merely a personal tragedy. It was a catastrophic blow to the family's standing and security. A chieftain's authority, particularly in the fluid and often brutal world of the steppe, rested heavily upon his personal strength, his alliances, and his ability to command respect. With Yesugei's sudden demise, the fragile equilibrium of their family's fortunes shattered. The Borjigin clan, once led by a formidable figure, was now left vulnerable, its future uncertain and precarious. This single poisoned meal would cast a long cold shadow over Temujin's adolescence and propel him into a world of unforgiving struggle. With the sudden death of Yesugei, the fragile alliances and loyalties that had sustained his family quickly dissolved. In the harsh pragmatic world of the steppe, a leader's power was often tethered to his living presence. Without Yesugei to enforce his authority, the support of the various clans and individuals who had once acknowledged his chieftainship evaporated. The Borjigin family, now led by a widow and her young children, was perceived as having lost its protector and its influence. The abandonment was swift and stark. Those who had once shared pastures and offered their loyalty now turned away. The most immediate and painful betrayal came from the very people who had been their nominal subjects and allies. They gathered their yurts, their livestock and their families, and simply moved away, leaving Hurlun and her children isolated. This departure was not marked by overt conflict, but by a quiet collective withdrawal, a stark declaration that the old bonds no longer held. Hurlun, now a widow with several young children, including Temujin, was left to face the unforgiving realities of the steppe alone. The family was stripped of their herds, their most valuable asset which represented their sustenance, their wealth, and their mobility. Without livestock, their ability to survive in the vast open landscape was severely compromised. They were reduced to the lowest rung of nomadic society, a state of extreme poverty and vulnerability. Their existence became a daily struggle for survival. They were forced to abandon the comfortable life of a chieftain's family and embrace a subsistence existence on the very fringes of the nomadic world. Hunting and gathering became their primary means of sustenance, a stark contrast to the herding life they had known. Temujin, still a child, would have been thrust into the harsh realities of foraging for wild roots, berries, and small game. Fishing in the rivers and streams also became a vital activity, a constant pursuit of food to ward off starvation. This abrupt descent into destitution and abandonment instilled a deep understanding of betrayal and the precarious nature of loyalty in Temujin. He witnessed firsthand how quickly power could shift, and how easily former allies could become indifferent or even hostile. This period of extreme hardship, marked by the constant threat of hunger and exposure, forged within him a profound resilience, and an acute awareness of the necessities of survival. The memory of this abandonment would remain a defining experience, shaping his future relationships and his approach to leadership. In the face of such overwhelming adversity, Hurlun emerged as the steadfast anchor for her children. Her strength, both physical and emotional, became the very foundation of their survival. She refused to yield to despair, instead channeling her energy into the arduous task of sustaining her family in the wilderness. Her resourcefulness, honed by a lifetime on the steppe, became their most vital asset. Hurlun tirelessly scoured the landscape for any available sustenance. She knew the land intimately, understanding where to find edible wild roots that could provide essential nutrients and which berries were safe to gather in the brief summer months. Her knowledge of the local flora was extensive, a quiet wisdom passed down through generations. She would spend long hours digging and searching, her determination unwavering, ensuring that her children had something to eat each day. Fishing became another critical skill for their survival. Hurlun taught her children how to fashion simple hooks and lines, or how to net fish from the rivers and streams that crisscrossed their territory. This was a painstaking process, often yielding only small catches, but each fish represented a victory against hunger. She would patiently guide them, demonstrating the techniques, instilling in them the practical knowledge necessary to feed themselves. Beyond the physical demands of survival, Hurlun also understood the profound importance of maintaining their familial bonds. She actively fostered a sense of unity among her children, recognizing that internal division would be their ultimate undoing. She would remind them of their shared heritage and their common struggle, emphasizing that only by working together could they hope to endure. Her words, though perhaps simple, carried the weight of experience and served to bind the young family together. She instilled in them a spirit of resilience and self-reliance, teaching them to adapt to their harsh circumstances. This period of intense hardship, guided by Hurlun's unwavering strength, became a crucible for Temujin and his siblings. He observed his mother's tireless efforts, her quiet determination, and her steadfast resolve. Her example of enduring and striving against impossible odds would leave an indelible mark on his character, shaping his own future leadership and his understanding of perseverance. Her actions ensured not just their physical survival, but also the preservation of their spirit, allowing them to cling to life on the desolate steppe. This period of profound deprivation became Temujin's primary school, teaching him lessons far more immediate and visceral than any formal instruction could provide. Every day presented a stark reminder of their vulnerability, and the constant struggle for sustenance became the central rhythm of his young life. He learned to read the subtle signs of the natural world, understanding that his very existence depended upon such keen observation. The pursuit of food was a relentless, all-consuming endeavour. Temujin, along with his brothers, began to participate actively in the hunts, however small and challenging they might be. They learned to set snares for small game, to track animals across the vast open plains, and to endure long periods of cold and hunger in pursuit of a meagre meal. These experiences forged within him an unyielding determination, a refusal to give up even when success seemed distant. He developed an intimate understanding of the steppe's ecosystems, learning the habits of marmots, hares, and birds. He observed the movements of larger game, though they were often too swift or powerful for their small, desperate hunting parties. These were not recreational pursuits, but essential acts of survival, where every successful hunt meant another day of life for his family. The pressure was immense, and the consequences of failure were immediate and dire. Through these harsh, daily realities, Temujin cultivated an acute sense of self-reliance. There were no larger clans or allies to depend upon. Only his immediate family and their collective efforts stood between them and starvation. He learned to trust his own instincts, to make quick decisions in challenging situations, and to rely on his own growing capabilities. This isolation, though painful, fostered an independence of spirit that would prove crucial in his later life. His powers of observation became exceptionally sharp. He learned to notice the smallest detail in the landscape, a bent blade of grass, a faint track in the dust, the flight pattern of a bird, all potential clues to the presence of food or danger. This heightened awareness extended to understanding the behavior of others, a skill that would later serve him in the complex world of tribal politics. The steppe, in its unforgiving grandeur, was teaching Temujin profound lessons in endurance, strategy, and the essential nature of survival, etching these early experiences deeply into his developing character. Amidst the harsh realities of their existence, a tragic and pivotal incident occurred that underscored the brutal nature of their survival. The scarcity of resources, the constant hunger, and the absence of a strong external authority created an environment ripe for internal conflict. This tension culminated in the killing of Bekta, Temujin's half-brother. The dispute itself was reportedly a minor one, centered around a small bird or a fish that Bekta had caught. In a world where every scrap of food was vital, such a seemingly trivial matter could escalate quickly into a life-or-death struggle. Temujin, accompanied by his full brother Kasar, confronted Bekta. The exact details of the confrontation are lost to time, but the outcome was clear. Bekta was killed. This act, while shocking in its brutality, can be understood within the desperate context of their lives. Bekta, being older, held a position of some authority within the small family unit. In a society where primogeniture often dictated leadership, he represented a potential rival to Temujin's emerging influence, especially as they navigated the treacherous path of their abandoned existence. The killing could be seen as a stark, if tragic, assertion of control and a brutal act of self-preservation in a world that offered no quarter. For Temujin, it was a profound and formative experience. It demonstrated the extreme lengths to which one might be driven in the struggle for survival and dominance. The act itself, regardless of its underlying motivations, marked a significant departure from the innocence of childhood. It etched a harsh lesson into his psyche. That power, even within one's own family, sometimes had to be taken decisively, and that the weak, or those perceived as obstacles, might not endure. Hurlun, their mother, reacted with deep sorrow and anger, scolding her sons for their violence. She reminded them of the dangers of internal strife, likening their actions to the self-destructive nature of a bird devouring its own fledglings. Her words underscored the fragile unity of their family and the constant threat of disintegration. Yet the incident, for all its tragedy, served to eliminate a rival and consolidate Temujin's position, albeit in a most harrowing manner within their small, isolated group. It was a grim testament to the unforgiving environment that moulded him. The precarious existence of Temujin and his family, marked by constant struggle and internal strife, soon took another turn for the worse. Their vulnerability on the vast, Shkasti, open steppe made them easy targets for more powerful groups. It was the Taichiud, a clan closely related to Temujin's own Borjigin, who eventually captured him. This was the very tribe that had abandoned his family following Yesugei's death, leaving them to their desperate fate. Their reappearance in Temujin's life as captors added another layer of bitter irony to his already harsh circumstances. The capture itself was a moment of profound humiliation and danger. To be taken prisoner in nomadic society was to lose all standing, to be stripped of one's freedom and dignity. Temujin was not merely held, he was yoked. The kang, a heavy wooden collar designed to restrict movement and prevent escape, was placed around his neck. This cumbersome device, often used for animals, was a visible symbol of his subjugation. It served as a constant physical and psychological burden, making every step a struggle and every moment a reminder of his powerlessness. As yoked prisoner, Temujin was paraded before the Taichi-Ud, a living trophy of their asserted dominance. The sight of him, a young boy burdened by the heavy collar, was meant to display their authority and to extinguish any lingering spark of his former status as a chieftain's son. He was subjected to public ridicule and constant surveillance, his movements restricted, his future uncertain. Each day brought the gnawing fear of further maltreatment, torture, or even execution. The Taichi-Ud had every reason to eliminate a potential future rival, especially one whose lineage, though currently diminished, still carried the weight of past leadership. This period of captivity was a crucible for Temujin. It forced him to confront the depths of human cruelty and the profound helplessness of being at the mercy of others. The experience of being a yoked prisoner, subjected to constant surveillance and public shame, instilled in him a deep understanding of subjugation. It also likely fueled a burgeoning desire for freedom and an unwavering resolve to never again experience such a state of powerlessness. The memory of the Taichi-Ud's abandonment and subsequent capture would linger, shaping his future actions and his approach to both loyalty and retribution. The heavy wooden yoke, a constant burden and symbol of his captivity, eventually became an instrument in Temujin's favour, though not in the way his captors intended. Day after day he endured the humiliation and the physical strain, but within him a quiet determination was hardening. There he observed his surroundings, learning the routines of his Taichi-Ud guards, noting their patterns of vigilance and their moments of laxity. This innate awareness, honed by years of survival on the unforgiving steppe, would prove invaluable. One evening, during a festival or celebration, the Taichi-Ud guards, perhaps lulled by alcohol or a false sense of security, became less attentive. Temujin seized this opportune moment. With the help of a sympathetic individual, a man named Sorkan Shira, who was touched by the young boy's plight and perhaps recognized a nascent strength within him, Temujin's escape was orchestrated. Sorkan Shira, a guard or a member of the household, loosened the yoke just enough for Temujin to slip free. The exact motivations of Sorkan Shira remain somewhat unclear, but his act of kindness, or perhaps foresight, played a pivotal role in the unfolding narrative. Temujin then found refuge hiding in a pile of wool. The Taichi-Ud, upon discovering his absence, launched a frantic search. They combed the area, even passing close to his hiding place, their shouts and movements filling the night with a renewed sense of danger. It was Sorkan Shira again, who, by a subtle gesture or misdirection, prevented his discovery. The escape itself was not just a flight, it was a calculated risk, a demonstration of Temujin's ability to act decisively under extreme pressure and to inspire loyalty in others, even those ostensibly aligned with his enemies. This daring escape marked a profound turning point in Temujin's young life. It was a testament not only to his physical resilience but also to his developing cunning and strategic mind. The successful flight from the Taichi-Ud demonstrated an early capacity for leadership, as he managed to secure the aid of an outsider. This event was more than just a momentary triumph. It was a foundational experience that solidified his resolve. It proved to him, and perhaps to those around him, that he possessed an extraordinary ability to overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles. The experience of captivity, followed by his audacious escape, forged a deeper understanding of human nature, power dynamics, and the critical importance of both internal strength and external alliances. It signaled the emergence of a resilient spirit, capable of navigating the treacherous currents of the nomadic world. After his harrowing escape from the Taichi-Ud, Temujin found himself once more adrift, yet with a renewed sense of purpose. Like his immediate priority was not merely survival, but the re-establishment of some form of stability, a foundation upon which to rebuild his shattered existence. A key element of this stability lay in a promise made years before, a bond forged in childhood. His father, Yesugei, had arranged a betrothal for him with Berta, a young girl from the Ongirat tribe, a tribe known for its beauty and its historical ties to the Borjigin clan. This arrangement, a common practice among nomadic peoples, was a strategic act intended to secure alliances and foster kinship. Despite the intervening years of hardship and separation, the memory of this promise remained. Temujin, now a young man, made the journey to seek out Berta. This quest was not driven solely by personal affection, though a connection would surely develop. It was also a pragmatic move, via reassertion of his lineage and a crucial step in formalizing an alliance that could provide much-needed support in the volatile steppe environment. He travelled to the encampment of Dei Sechen, Berta's father, to fulfill the traditional betrothal. The meeting with Berta and her family was a quiet reaffirmation of ancient customs. There was a respectful exchange, and the marriage was solemnized. Berta became Temujin's first wife, a union that would prove to be profoundly significant, both personally and politically. Her presence provided a measure of personal stability, a calming influence amidst the constant struggles for existence. She represented a domestic anchor, a quiet strength that grounded him. Beyond the personal connection, the marriage to Berta served as a critical alliance. The Ongirat were a respected tribe, and their kinship with Temujin's Borjigin clan provided a network of support. In the fragmented world of the steppe, where allegiances shifted like the sands, such a union offered a vital sense of belonging and protection. It demonstrated Temujin's commitment to tradition and his capacity to forge enduring bonds. This marriage was not merely a romantic tale, it was a strategic foundation, a quiet cornerstone upon which the vast edifice of his future would gradually begin to rise. The fragile stability Temujin had begun to establish with Berta was abruptly shattered. The peace of their modest encampment on the steppe was violently disturbed by a sudden and devastating raid. These were not random bandits, but the Merkit tribe, a powerful and long-standing rival. Their attack was not born of chance, but of a calculated act of vengeance. The Merkits bore a deep-seated grudge against Temujin's family. Years prior, Temujin's father Yesugei had abducted Hoelun, Temujin's mother, from a Merkit man named Chiledu. This act of seizure, common though it might have been in the brutal customs of the steppe, had never been forgotten by the Merkit. The passage of time had not dulled their memory of the insult, nor their desire for retribution. Now, with Temujin in a vulnerable position, they saw their opportunity to exact a long-delayed revenge. Their raid was swift and brutal, a coordinated assault designed to inflict maximum personal pain. The calm of the early morning hours was broken by the thundering hooves of their horses and the harsh cries of the attackers. Temujin and his family were caught unprepared, overwhelmed by the Merkit's numerical superiority and the ferocity of their assault. In the chaos and terror, Temujin, still young and lacking significant followers, was unable to mount an effective defense. He was forced to flee, escaping with his mother and siblings, but he could not protect Berta. She was seized by the Merkit warriors, torn from her new husband and carried away as a captive. This abduction was a profound personal blow to Temujin. Berta was not merely an alliance, she was his wife, the quiet centre of his emerging domestic world. Her capture represented not only a deep emotional wound, but also a grave insult to his honour and his nascent authority. In the harsh societal codes of the steppe, the abduction of a wife was an act of profound humiliation, a public declaration of weakness and powerlessness. And the loss of Berta created an immediate and overwhelming imperative for Temujin. His personal grief merged with a fierce drive for justice and restitution. He could not allow this insult to stand. Her recovery became his singular focus, a mission that transcended all other concerns. The quiet life he had sought to build was replaced by an urgent, burning need for action, marking a dramatic turning point in his early journey. With Bertie abducted and his small household in disarray, Temujin understood the immediate need for strength beyond his own limited capabilities. The Merkit were a formidable tribe, and a direct confrontation would be suicidal with his meagre following. His only recourse was to forge alliances, a strategic necessity that would define much of his early career. He turned first to Jamuka, his revered Anda, or blood brother. The bond of Ander was considered sacred among the steppe nomads, often surpassing that of biological kinship. Temujin and Jamuka had exchanged gifts and sworn oaths of eternal loyalty in their youth, a pact that now offered a potential source of military support. Jamuka, a charismatic and respected leader in his own right, commanded a significant following. Temujin approached him, recounting the injustice of Berta's abduction and appealing to their shared bond. Jamuka, honouring their oath, pledged his assistance. Next, Temujin sought out Togrul, the powerful Khan of the Keryid tribe. Togrul held a special place in Temujin's personal history, having been a close ally and sworn brother of Temujin's father Yasuge. This established relationship, though somewhat distant by the time of Berta's abduction, provided Temujin with a crucial familial claim for aid. He presented himself before Togrul, reminding the elder Khan of his bond with Yasuge and highlighting the outrage of the Merkit's actions, which were not only an affront to Temujin, but also a challenge to the established order of tribal relations. Togrul, perhaps swayed by the memory of his friendship with Yasuge, and recognizing the potential for an advantageous alliance, agreed to lend his considerable military strength. The Keryid were one of the most powerful tribes on the steppe, and their involvement significantly altered the balance of power. This moment marked Temujin's first truly significant foray into the complex world of steppe diplomacy and alliance building, and it demonstrated a pragmatic understanding of power dynamics and the importance of leveraging existing relationships and ancient customs. He recognized that personal vengeance, however deeply felt, required collective action. By appealing to both the sacred bond of blood brotherhood and the historical ties of his father, Temujin began to assemble the formidable force necessary to challenge the Merkit and reclaim his abducted wife. This strategic gathering of allies laid the groundwork for his future ascendance. With the combined forces of Jamuka's followers and Togrul's Keryid warriors, Temujin now commanded a formidable host. The alliance moved with purpose across the steppe, their objective clear: to reclaim Berta from the Merkit. The campaign was swift and decisive. The Merkit, caught by surprise by the scale and coordination of the attack, were overwhelmed. Their encampments were scattered, and many were put to flight. Amidst the chaos and the aftermath of the battle, Berta was found. Her return to Temujin was a moment of profound personal satisfaction, a successful culmination of his desperate quest for her recovery. She had endured captivity, but her spirit remained unbroken. The reunion was a powerful affirmation of Temujin's determination and the strength of his nascent alliances. Soon after her return, Berta gave birth to a son. This child, named Yoki, meaning guest or stranger, arrived under circumstances that cast a subtle, yet persistent shadow. Berta had been held captive by the Merkit for a period of months, a duration that raised quiet questions about Yochi's paternity. Even while Temujin publicly acknowledged Yochi as his eldest son and treated him as such throughout his life, the circumstances of his birth were never fully forgotten. This quiet uncertainty surrounding Yochi's fatherhood would later become a source of subtle tension within Temujin's own family, particularly among his other sons. Despite this underlying query, Joshi was raised within Temujin's household, receiving the training and privileges due to a son of a rising leader. The successful rescue of Berta solidified Temujin's standing among his allies and demonstrated his capacity for leadership and strategic action. It also marked the beginning of his family's expansion, though with an early, enduring complexity. The experience of this campaign, each from the initial shock of abduction to the strategic alliance building and eventual triumphant return, served as a foundational lesson for Temujin. It underscored the brutal realities of steppe life, the importance of loyalty, and the necessity of decisive action, all of which would continue to shape his path forward. As Temujin navigated the treacherous landscape of tribal politics and warfare, a core group of individuals began to coalesce around him, forming the very foundation of his future power. These were not merely followers, but trusted companions, bound by kinship, shared hardship, and a burgeoning sense of loyalty. His half-brothers, Kassar and Belgute, stood particularly close. Kassar, known for his exceptional archery skills, provided a fierce and reliable presence in battle, his prowess on the field a significant asset. Belgute, though perhaps less celebrated in legend, was a steadfast and loyal supporter, offering a calm and steady hand. Their familial ties, forged in the crucible of their difficult upbringing, provided an unbreakable bond that anchored Temujin's early efforts. Beyond his immediate family, other figures of immense importance began to emerge. Bo-Orshu, a young man of noble birth, joined Temujin early on, drawn by his character and vision. Their bond formed through an incident where Bo-Orshu helped Temujin recover stolen horses, showcasing a deep sense of justice and courage. From that moment, Bo-Orshu became one of Temujin's most trusted confidants, and a general of immense capability, his loyalty unwavering through every trial. Another pivotal figure was Jelme, a member of the Uriankai tribe, who had served Temujin's father and now offered his unwavering allegiance to the son. Jelme's steadfastness and resourcefulness were legendary. He once risked his own life to save Temujin when he was wounded in battle, demonstrating a profound personal devotion that transcended mere duty. These men, Kassar, Belgute, Bo-Orshu, and Jelme, represented the initial stones in the construction of Temujin's formidable military and political structure. They were not simply warriors, but were integral to his strategic thinking and operational execution. Their commitment was not based on coercion, but on a deep personal connection and a belief in Temujin's destiny. This inner circle would expand over time, but these early companions established the ethos of loyalty and shared purpose that would define the Mongol Empire. Then their unwavering support was a testament to Temujin's burgeoning charisma and his ability to inspire profound devotion, laying the groundwork for the unified force he would eventually command. Among Temujin's earliest and most significant alliances was the one he forged with Jamuka, his blood brother, or Anda. This bond, formed in their youth, was a sacred commitment on the steppe, signifying a shared destiny and mutual support. For a time, their relationship was one of deep camaraderie, reflecting the ideals of nomadic brotherhood. They shared encampments, hunted together, and fought side by side, notably in the successful campaign to rescue Berta. Jamuka, a charismatic leader in his own right, brought a significant following to this partnership, bolstering Temujin's early strength. However, as their influence grew, then subtle fissures began to appear within their seemingly unbreakable bond. Their leadership styles, though both effective, were fundamentally different. Temujin, having experienced profound hardship and abandonment, tended towards a more meritocratic approach, rewarding loyalty and skill regardless of tribal affiliation. He sought to create a unified structure, drawing individuals from disparate groups into his personal service. Jamukha, by contrast, adhered more closely to traditional aristocratic principles, emphasizing tribal identity and established hierarchies. His followers were largely drawn from his own clan and those who recognized his inherited authority. These diverging philosophies created a quiet tension. While the Under Oath demanded unwavering loyalty, the realities of accumulating power in a fragmented world began to challenge its purity. The followers of both men, observing these differences, started to perceive two distinct paths. Temujin's approach offered a new form of allegiance, potentially appealing to those dispossessed or seeking advancement outside of traditional lineage. Jamukha's offered continuity and the familiar structures of the past. The cracks in their brotherhood were not sudden or dramatic initially. They were gradual, almost imperceptible shifts, like the slow movement of a glacier. As more people gravitated towards Temujin's vision of a unified force, Jamukha's position as an equal partner began to feel threatened. The ideals of shared power and mutual respect, once the bedrock of their Anda relationship, started to yield to the competitive pressures of leadership. The steppe, though vast, could only accommodate so many great leaders, and the paths of Temujin and Jamukha, once intertwined, were slowly but surely beginning to diverge, foreshadowing a future where brotherhood would be tested by the stark realities of ambition and control. This quiet tension, born from differing visions, would eventually lead to a profound and tragic separation. With a core group of loyal companions and the initial successes of his alliances, Temujin began to cultivate a reputation that extended beyond his immediate kin. His actions, from the daring escape from the Taichiu to the decisive rescue of Berta, spoke of a leader capable of both resilience and effective action. These tales, spread by word of mouth across the vast steppes, drew the attention of others seeking stability and opportunity in a turbulent era. People began to gather around him, not solely out of tribal obligation, but by choice. They were drawn by his emerging charisma, a quiet strength that promised a different kind of leadership. Unlike many traditional chieftains who ruled by inherited status and often through arbitrary decree, Temujin demonstrated a burgeoning sense of fairness. He was observed to treat his followers with a certain impartiality, evaluating their contributions and loyalty rather than their birthright alone. This approach resonated deeply with individuals from various clans, especially those who felt marginalized or mistreated by their own leaders. His military acumen, proven in skirmishes and strategic maneuvers, offered a tangible benefit: protection. In a world where raids and abductions were constant threats, the ability to safeguard one's family and herds was paramount. Temujin offered this security, and in return he demanded loyalty and commitment. Those who pledged themselves to him found themselves part of a growing, cohesive unit, where contributions were recognized and fidelity was rewarded. This was a gradual process, not a sudden surge. It involved countless small decisions, fair judgments in disputes, and the consistent demonstration of his resolve. Each new family, each new warrior who joined his camp added to his burgeoning authority. They were drawn by the hope of a stable future, by the promise of a leader who would stand by them. Temujin was not merely gathering a warband, he was quietly building a community, an increasingly diverse group united under his banner. These were the first steady steps towards consolidating power, laying the groundwork for a broader influence that would eventually transform the entire steppe. His reputation as a just and capable protector slowly solidified, attracting more and more to his nascent leadership. The once unbreakable bond between Temujin and Jamukha, forged in childhood and reinforced by their blood oath, began to fray under the accumulating pressures of their expanding influence. It was not a sudden rupture, but a slow, deliberate drifting apart, driven by their increasingly divergent visions for how power should be structured and how society should be governed. Jamukha, rooted in the established traditions of the steppe, represented the old order. His leadership philosophy was deeply aristocratic, favouring the established noble families and their hereditary rights. He believed that status and authority should flow from lineage, from the ancient tribal structures that had long defined nomadic life. For Jamukha, the traditional hierarchy was a natural and necessary framework, ensuring order and preserving the integrity of the ruling clans. He saw himself as a guardian of these ancient customs, upholding the prerogatives of the highborn. Temujin, however, was quietly charting a different course, one shaped by his own difficult experiences and his observations of the often unjust nature of the existing system. His philosophy leaned towards meritocracy, advocating that leadership and reward should be based on individual ability, loyalty, and proven contribution, rather than solely on birth. He had gathered followers from various backgrounds, elevating individuals like Bo-Orchu and Jelme, who, despite humble origins, had demonstrated unwavering devotion and skill. This approach challenged the very foundation of the aristocratic system that Jamukha upheld. The differences became increasingly stark. While Jamukha sought to reinforce the power of the traditional nobility, Temujin was subtly undermining it by offering opportunities to those from lower ranks. This ideological chasm was significant. It reflected a fundamental disagreement on the very structure of their emerging societies. Jamukha's methods were seen by some as exclusionary, whereas Temujin's approach, though still embryonic, offered a path for advancement that transcended inherited status. The final break, when it came, was perhaps inevitable. It arose from a seemingly minor incident involving the movement of their camps, yet it symbolized the deeper, irreconcilable differences that had grown between the two blood brothers. The traditionalist and the innovator could no longer comfortably coexist, as their respective paths were now leading in fundamentally opposing directions, setting the stage for future conflicts that would reshape the political landscape of the steppe. Following the definitive split between Temujin and Jamukha, open conflict became inevitable. The ideological differences, once simmering beneath the surface, now manifested in direct confrontation. One of the earliest and most significant of these clashes was the Battle of Dalan Baljut, a pivotal engagement that, though a defeat for Temujin, offered profound lessons that would shape his future military genius. The precise location of Dalan Baljut is debated by historians, but it is generally understood to have been in a marshy, low-lying area. Jamukha, commanding a larger and more experienced force, comprising 13 tribal groups, initiated the attack. His army significantly outnumbered Temujin's fledgling force, which was still composed largely of loyal followers rather than a fully structured military. This disparity in numbers and organization proved to be a critical factor. Temujin's forces were caught in a disadvantageous position. The terrain, with its soft ground and potential for ambush, did not favor his smaller, less cohesive units. Jamukha, skilled in traditional steppe warfare, executed a coordinated assault, pressing his numerical advantage. Temujin's men, despite their loyalty and bravery, were overwhelmed. The battle resulted in a clear defeat for Temujin, forcing him and his remaining followers to retreat in disarray. Many of his horses and supplies were lost, and his nascent army suffered significant casualties. While a tactical setback, Dalan Baljut was not a catastrophic blow to Temujin's long-term ambitions. Instead, it served as a harsh, yet invaluable, practical education. The defeat highlighted crucial weaknesses in his military organization, his reconnaissance, and his strategic planning. He learned about the importance of cohesive unit structures, the necessity of superior intelligence, and the perils of engaging a numerically superior enemy on unfavorable ground. The retreat from Dalan Baljut was a moment of vulnerability, but it also solidified Temujin's resolve. Rather than being broken by the defeat, he internalized its lessons. He observed Jamuka's brutal treatment of captured enemies after the battle, which included boiling some of Temujin's junior officers alive. This cruelty, while intended to intimidate, only further alienated potential allies and reinforced Temujin's own commitment to a more disciplined and just approach to warfare and governance. The experience at Dalan Balja, though painful, became a foundational moment in Temujin's evolution as a military leader, sharpening his strategic mind and reinforcing his vision for a unified and disciplined force. Following the sobering defeat at Dalan Baljut, Temujin understood more clearly the necessity of strong alliances. His early experiences had shown him that individual strength, while important, was insufficient in the complex tribal landscape of the steppe. Among his most vital relationships was the one he cultivated with Togrul, the powerful Khan of the Karayids. This alliance was not merely a convenience, it was a cornerstone of Temujin's early legitimacy and provided essential military support. Togrul, an influential figure among the nomadic tribes, had been a sworn Anda or blood brother to Temujin's father, Yesugei. This historical bond provided Temujin with a crucial link to established power and tradition, giving him a measure of respect and credibility among the wary tribal chieftains. Temujin skillfully leveraged this existing relationship, approaching Togrul not as a supplicant, but as a rightful heir seeking assistance from an elder kinsman. The Karayid alliance offered Temujin substantial advantages. Togrul's forces were numerous and well regarded, while providing Temujin with a vital military shield and an offensive capability he did not yet possess independently. In the fluid world of steppe politics, an alliance with a major power like the Karayids deterred smaller rivals and lent weight to Temujin's growing authority. It allowed him to project power beyond the immediate reach of his own followers. This collaboration was not entirely one-sided. Temujin, even in his early struggles, demonstrated loyalty and military acumen. He participated in various campaigns alongside Togrul, proving his worth as a commander and a reliable ally. These joint ventures helped to hone his strategic skills and allowed his own men to gain valuable combat experience under the umbrella of a larger, more established force. The Karayids, in turn, benefited from Temujin's burgeoning leadership and the loyalty of his increasingly devoted followers. The Karayid alliance thus represented more than just a temporary pact. It was a strategic partnership that granted Temujin a crucial period of growth and consolidation. Under Togrul's protective wing, Temujin could rebuild his strength, refine his military tactics, and attract more adherents, all while gaining invaluable experience in the intricate dance of steppe diplomacy and warfare. This period of sustained cooperation with the Karayids was instrumental in laying the groundwork for his future triumphs. The alliance between Temujin and Togrul, while initially strong and mutually beneficial, began to fray as Temujin's power and influence steadily grew. Togrul, the elder and once dominant figure, watched with increasing apprehension as his protégé became a formidable leader in his own right, attracting more followers and demonstrating a strategic brilliance that threatened to eclipse his own. This shift in dynamics sowed seeds of distrust and resentment. Tensions escalated due to a combination of factors, including the machinations of Togrul's jealous son, Sengum, who viewed Temujin as a direct threat to his own succession. Zengum actively worked to poison his father's mind against Temujin, whispering warnings of Temujin's ambition and urging Togrul to eliminate him before it was too late. These internal pressures within the Karayid leadership played a significant role in the unravelling of the alliance. The relationship reached a critical point when Togrul, swayed by Sengum's counsel and his own growing fear, plotted to ambush and assassinate Temujin. Temujin, however, received timely intelligence of the impending betrayal. This act of treachery by his former patron and father figure was a profound turning point, solidifying Temujin's resolve and hardening his approach to those who stood in his path. The bond of Anda, once sacred, was now irrevocably broken. Temujin was forced to make a strategic retreat, leading his loyal followers through difficult terrain to avoid the Kerid trap. This period of evasion demonstrated his resilience and his ability to keep his forces cohesive even under duress. He used this time to regroup, assess the situation, and plan his counter-move. The ultimate confrontation occurred in a series of engagements that culminated in the Battle of Kalakaljid Sands. Temujin, employing his developing tactical genius, outmaneuvered the Kerid forces. His disciplined troops, driven by loyalty and a desire for justice against the betrayal, fought with fierce determination. The Kerid army, despite its initial numerical advantage, was eventually broken. Togrul and Sengim were forced to flee, their power shattered. The downfall of the Kerids marked a significant victory for Temujin, eliminating one of the most powerful rival confederations on the steppe. It demonstrated his capacity to overcome formidable opposition, even from those who had once been his closest allies. This triumph further cemented his reputation as a formidable and unyielding leader, attracting even more warriors to his banner and bringing him closer to his ultimate goal of unifying the disparate Mongol tribes. With the Kerids subdued, Temujin's gaze turned westward, towards the Naiman tribe. The Naiman represented the last major independent power in western Mongolia, a sophisticated and influential group that had long maintained a degree of cultural and political advancement compared to some of their nomadic neighbours. They possessed a more developed administrative system, and some historical accounts suggest they had adopted aspects of sedentary culture and even practiced Nestorian Christianity. Their defeat was essential for Temujin to achieve complete dominance over the central steppe. The Naiman, under their leader Tayang Khan, had also provided refuge to some of Temujin's former adversaries, including remnants of the Merkit and even Jamukha, who had sought their protection after his own defeat. This presented a clear and direct challenge to Temujin's burgeoning authority and the unity he sought to establish. The campaign against the Naiman was not merely about conquest. It was about eliminating the last significant obstacle to a unified Mongol realm. Temujin meticulously prepared for this critical confrontation. He organised his army with a disciplined structure he'd been refining over years of warfare. This included the strategic deployment of his cavalry, the effective use of scouts, and a system of command and control that ensured swift communication and coordinated movements across vast distances. His forces were now a highly effective fighting machine, honed by numerous battles and led by experienced commanders loyal to him. The Naiman, aware of Temujin's growing power, also mobilized their forces and are confident in their numbers and their historical prestige. The two great armies converged, setting the stage for a decisive engagement. The campaign was characterized by strategic maneuvers across the steppe, with both sides attempting to gain an advantage. The climactic battle against the Naiman unfolded with fierce intensity. Temujin's tactics proved superior. He employed feigned retreats to draw the Naiman into disadvantageous positions, utilized flanking movements to disrupt their formations, and pressed his attacks relentlessly. The Naiman, despite their bravery, were unable to withstand the systematic and disciplined assault of Temujin's unified forces. Tayang Khan himself was killed during the fighting, a critical blow to the Naiman's morale and command structure. His son, Kuchlug, managed to escape with a remnant of their forces, but the bulk of the Naiman power was utterly broken. Their defeat was comprehensive and irreversible, marking the end of their independence as a major steppe power. This victory effectively removed the last significant challenge to Temujin's authority in the region, paving the way for the formal establishment of the Mongol Empire. Following the decisive defeat of the Naiman, the lingering presence of Jamukha remained a loose thread in the tapestry of Temujin's consolidation of power. Jamukha, once Temujin's Anda, or blood brother, had been a persistent rival, a symbol of the old, fragmented steppe order that Temujin was determined to dismantle. After the Naiman's fall, Jamukha found himself increasingly isolated, his influence diminished and his options narrowing. He had sought refuge with the Naiman, and with their destruction, his position became untenable. Eventually the pressure became too great for Jamukha's dwindling followers. Faced with the overwhelming might and unwavering resolve of Temujin, a group of his own men made the difficult decision to betray him. They captured Jamukha and delivered him to Temujin, hoping to gain favour or secure their own survival in the new order. This act brought an end to the long and complex rivalry between the two men who had once shared a deep bond. When Jamukha was brought before Temujin, the atmosphere was charged not with animosity, but with a quiet solemnity. Temujin, despite the years of conflict and the numerous betrayals, did not forget the Anda oath they had once sworn. He condemned the men who had betrayed Jamukha, upholding the principle that loyalty, even to an enemy, should be honoured. He ordered the execution of Jamukha's betrayers, demonstrating that such disloyalty was not to be rewarded within his nascent empire. Then Temujin turned to Jamukha. The historical accounts suggest a meeting marked by a profound understanding of their shared past and the divergent paths they had chosen. Jamukha, recognizing the inevitability of his fate and the triumph of Temujin's vision, is said to have requested a noble death, one that would not spill his blood upon the earth, in keeping with the traditions of certain steppe aristocrats. Temujin honoured this request. Jamukha was executed without shedding blood, likely by having his back broken, a method reserved for those of high status. This act, while firm and definitive, also carried a distinct air of respect. It acknowledged their former brotherhood and the significant role Jamukha had played as a rival, whose very opposition had, in some ways, sharpened Temujin's own strategic mind and resolve. With Jamukha's passing, the last major personal and ideological challenge to Temujin's supreme leadership on the steppe was definitively removed. The path was now clear for the formal declaration of a unified Mongol nation. With the final defeat of the Naiman and the solemn end of Jamukha, a new era began to dawn upon the vast open lands of the steppe. Temujin had, through decades of relentless effort, strategic brilliance, and sheer force of will, achieved what no leader before him had fully accomplished. He had systematically dismantled the old fragmented tribal structures that had defined nomadic life for centuries, replacing them with a singular, the unified authority. The scattered Mongol and Turkic tribes, once perpetually embroiled in internecine conflicts, raids, and shifting alliances, now found themselves bound together under one banner. This was not merely a temporary coalition or a fleeting dominance. It was a profound and lasting integration. Temujin had not simply conquered these tribes. He had begun the intricate process of forging them into a cohesive political and military entity. This unification was an achievement of truly unprecedented scale and impact. For generations, the steppe peoples had lived in a state of constant flux, their loyalties shifting with the winds of fortune and the ebb and flow of power. The idea of a single overarching government, encompassing such a vast array of distinct clans and peoples, was a radical departure from historical precedent, where Temujin's success lay not only in his military prowess, but also in his emerging administrative foresight, which understood that lasting power required more than just conquest. It demanded order, law, and a shared sense of purpose. The various tribal identities, while not erased, were now subsumed under a larger collective Mongol identity. The ancient feuds and rivalries that had once torn the steppe apart were suppressed, replaced by a centralized command structure that demanded absolute fealty. This newly forged unity meant that the formidable energies and martial capabilities of the steppe warriors, once dispersed and often turned against each other, could now be directed outward with a singular, focused intent. This culmination marked the end of an arduous journey for Temujin, transforming him from a chieftain struggling for survival into the undisputed master of the steppe. The groundwork had been laid meticulously through every battle, every alliance, and every strategic decision. The disparate pieces of a vast and complex puzzle had finally been fitted together, forming a formidable whole that would soon reshape the contours of the known world. The stage was now set for the formal declaration of this new, unified power. In the year 1206, a momentous assembly was convened on the banks of the Onon River, a place imbued with historical significance for the Mongol people. This grand gathering, known as a Kurultai, was unlike any before it. It brought together the leaders, generals, and representatives of all the now unified Mongol and Turkic tribes, from the furthest reaches of the steppe, where the air was thick with expectation, a quiet anticipation of a new order. At this historic Kurultai, Temujin, the man who had forged unity from disarray, was formally recognized as the supreme leader of the newly established Mongol nation. It was here that he was bestowed with the title by which he would forever be known, Genghis Khan. The name itself, often translated as Oceanic Khan or Universal Ruler, reflected the boundless ambition and the vast scope of his achievement. It was a name that resonated with power and destiny, signifying a dominion that stretched beyond the immediate horizons of the steppe. The proclamation of Genghis Khan was more than a mere title. It was the formal declaration of a new political entity. The fragmented tribal confederations of old were officially dissolved, replaced by a single cohesive state, and this marked the birth of the Mongol Empire, not yet in its full territorial expanse, but as a recognized political power with a unified purpose. The Kurultai symbolized the transition from a collection of disparate nomadic groups to a single formidable nation, bound by allegiance to one leader and one vision. During this assembly, the foundational principles of the new state were articulated. Laws, known as the Yasa, began to be formulated, designed to govern the conduct of all Mongols, regulate disputes, and maintain the fragile but potent unity that had been so arduously achieved. The Kurultai of 1206 was therefore not just a celebration of Temujin's triumph, but the constitutional moment of the Mongol Empire, setting in motion the administrative and legal frameworks that would underpin its future expansion. It was a quiet, as yet profound, turning point in the history of the steppe and indeed of the world. The title Genghis Khan, bestowed upon Temujin at the Kurultai of 1206, carries a profound weight of meaning and historical significance. Its precise etymology has been a subject of scholarly discussion, yet two primary interpretations prevail, both reflecting the monumental scope of his perceived authority. The most widely accepted translation is Universal Ruler, suggesting a mandate that transcended tribal boundaries and encompassed all peoples. This interpretation speaks to the ambition and the spiritual conviction that fueled the nascent Mongol Empire. Another compelling translation renders Genghis as oceanic or great, thus making the full title Oceanic Ruler or Great Ruler. This imagery evokes the vastness of the sea, limitless and all-encompassing, mirroring the boundless dominion that Genghis Khan and his followers believed was their destiny. The endless horizon of the steppe, much like the ocean, could have inspired this sense of immeasurable power and reach. Central to understanding the significance of this title is the concept of a divinely sanctioned mandate. The Mongols believed that Genghis Khan's rise was not merely a matter of military prowess or political acumen, but a direct blessing from Tengri, the eternal blue sky. This celestial deity was the supreme force in their shamanistic worldview, and his favour bestowed upon Genghis Khan the legitimate authority to rule not just the Mongols, but the entire world. This belief provided a powerful ideological foundation for the expansion that would follow, transforming conquest into a sacred duty. This divine mandate imbued Genghis Khan's leadership with an almost mystical authority. It fostered unwavering loyalty among his followers and instilled a deep sense of purpose in their campaigns. The title itself became a symbol of this sacred mission, a declaration that the new Mongol state was destined for universal dominion, guided by the heavens. It transformed Temujin from a skilled chieftain into a figure of cosmic importance, a ruler whose authority flowed from the very fabric of existence. The name Genghis Khan thus encapsulated not just a man, but an entire worldview and a destined path for an empire. With his new title and the spiritual mandate firmly established, Genghis Khan immediately set about constructing the administrative and legal architecture necessary for governing his newly unified empire. The era of fragmented tribalism had passed, and a cohesive, centrally governed state was now taking shape. This foundational work was crucial for transforming a collection of disparate nomadic groups into a formidable and enduring power. A cornerstone of these reforms was the creation of the Yasa, a comprehensive code of law that served as the legal and moral framework for the entire Mongol Empire. The Yasa was not merely a collection of statutes, it was a living document, evolving over time, yet its core principles remained constant. It addressed a wide array of societal aspects, from military discipline and taxation to property rights and the treatment of conquered peoples. Its provisions were designed to enforce strict order, prevent internal strife, and ensure the efficient functioning of the state. For instance, mere theft was severely punished, as was betraying one's lord or fleeing from battle. Religious tolerance was also enshrined, a pragmatic measure that allowed diverse populations to coexist under Mongol rule. The Yasa effectively replaced the older unwritten customs of the various tribes, providing a universal legal system that bound all subjects to the will of the Khan. Alongside these legal innovations, Genghis Khan meticulously reorganized the Mongol military, transforming it into an instrument of unparalleled efficiency and discipline. The traditional tribal levies, often unreliable and prone to internal divisions, were replaced by a decimal system of organization. This system broke down the army into units of 10 Arban, 100 Jaghun, 1,000 Mingan, and 10,000 Tumen. Each unit was commanded by an appointed officer, whose loyalty was directly to the Khan, rather than to a particular clan or tribe. This decimal structure fostered a strong sense of unity and cohesion within the military. It facilitated rapid communication and coordinated movements on the battlefield, allowing for complex maneuvers that bewildered traditional armies. Moreover, it blurred old tribal distinctions, integrating warriors from different backgrounds into a single, formidable fighting force. This systematic approach to military organization was a radical departure from previous nomadic practices and laid the groundwork for the Mongol Empire's extraordinary military successes in the decades to come. These initial reforms, the Yasa and the Decimal Army, were not merely administrative details. They were the very sinews of the emerging empire, binding it together with law and order and preparing it for a destiny of expansion. The military that Genghis Khan forged was unlike any seen before on the steppes, or indeed in much of the world. It transcended the limitations of traditional tribal levies, which were often temporary gatherings of warriors bound by kinship or personal loyalty to a chieftain. Instead, the Mongol army became a permanent professional force, characterized by a rigorous discipline that was enforced with an unyielding hand. Every soldier understood their role and the severe consequences of disobedience, desertion, or cowardice. This strict adherence to orders ensured that complex battlefield strategies could be executed with precision, even across vast distances. A defining feature of this transformed army was its embrace of meritocracy. Promotions were not based on noble birth, tribal affiliation, or personal wealth, but solely on skill, bravery, and proven leadership in battle. This open system allowed talented individuals from any background to rise through the ranks, fostering deep loyalty to Genghis Khan himself, and motivating soldiers to excel. It was a revolutionary concept for its time, breaking down centuries of social hierarchy and empowering those who demonstrated true capability. The inherent mobility of the Mongol army was another key to its success. Raised in the saddle, every Mongol warrior was an accomplished horseman, capable of riding for extended periods with minimal rest. Each soldier typically maintained several horses, yet allowing them to switch mounts and sustain incredible speeds over long distances, covering ground that would take other armies weeks to traverse. This enabled the Mongols to appear suddenly and unexpectedly, striking deep into enemy territory before any effective defense could be organized. Their light cavalry tactics involving feigned retreats and flanking maneuvers were honed to perfection, exploiting their speed and archery skills to devastating effect. Furthermore, the Mongol army was notable for its pragmatic integration of conquered peoples. Rather than simply subjugating defeated populations, Genghis Khan often absorbed their warriors into his own ranks. Specialists, such as engineers skilled in siege warfare from settled civilizations like China, were particularly valued. These new recruits were trained in Mongol tactics and discipline, serving alongside their conquerors. This integration not only swelled the ranks, but also diversified the army's capabilities, allowing it to adapt to different terrains and opponents. This blended force, unified by a shared purpose and an unwavering loyalty to the Great Khan, represented a formidable and unprecedented military machine. With the Mongol Empire unified and its formidable army organized, Genghis Khan turned his gaze beyond the steppes, towards the settled agricultural lands that bordered his domain. His initial major campaigns were directed against the Western Jia Kingdom, also known as the Tangut Empire. This kingdom, established by the Tanguts, a people of Tibetan origin, controlled a vital stretch of territory in what is now northwestern China, bordering both the Mongol lands and the powerful Jin dynasty. The strategic motivations behind these attacks were multifaceted. Firstly, the Western Jia represented a potential threat to the newly formed Mongol Empire's southern flank. Their proximity meant that they could either serve as a buffer or, if hostile, provide a base for other enemies. Securing this border was paramount for the long-term stability of the burgeoning Mongol state. Secondly, the Western Jia possessed significant resources that were highly coveted by the nomadic Mongols. Their cities contained wealth, agricultural produce, and skilled artisans, all of which could enrich the Mongol treasury and enhance their capabilities. Control over trade routes passing through Western Jia territory, particularly the lucrative Silk Road, also offered immense economic advantages, as access to these resources was crucial for sustaining a rapidly expanding empire and rewarding its loyal warriors. Perhaps most importantly, these initial campaigns against the Western Jia served as a critical proving ground for Genghis Khan's newly unified army. While the Mongol warriors were formidable in skirmishes on the open steppe, they lacked extensive experience in siege warfare and sustained campaigns against well-fortified cities. The Western Jia, with its walled settlements and organized defenses, presented the ideal opportunity to test the discipline, coordination, and adaptability of the Mongol military machine. It was a chance to refine tactics, integrate new technologies, and solidify the command structure under real combat conditions. Beginning in 1205, even before his formal proclamation as Genghis Khan, and intensifying after 1209, Mongol forces launched a series of incursions into Western Xia territory. These campaigns were characterized by the Mongols' swift movements and relentless pressure. While they initially struggled with the formidable defences of urban centres, they systematically plundered the countryside, forcing the Western Xia rulers to engage in battle or endure economic devastation. The Mongols learned valuable lessons in each encounter, gradually adapting their strategies to overcome the challenges posed by fortified positions. These early struggles forged the Mongol army into an even more effective instrument of conquest, preparing it for the even greater challenges that lay ahead. Having secured the Western Xia border and further honed his army's capabilities, Genghis Khan contemplated an even grander and more perilous undertaking, the invasion of the Jin dynasty. This was a decision of immense historical consequence, a move that demonstrated a remarkable audacity and strategic foresight. The Jin dynasty, ruled by the Jurchens, controlled a vast and populous territory across northern China, encompassing rich agricultural lands, bustling cities, and a sophisticated administrative apparatus. Unlike the nomadic tribes or even the Western Xia, the Jin represented a truly formidable settled empire, possessing a large, well-equipped army and extensive fortifications. The very idea of a nomadic force, no matter how unified and disciplined, challenging such an established power seemed almost unthinkable to many contemporaries. The logistical challenges alone were immense, supplying a large army far from its traditional pastures, navigating unfamiliar terrain, and confronting an enemy capable of fielding vast numbers of soldiers. Yet, Genghis Khan recognized the strategic imperative. The Jin dynasty had long exerted dominance over the northern steppe, often demanding tribute and interfering in tribal affairs. Their strength was a constant shadow over the Mongol Empire, and their wealth represented a prize that could elevate the Mongols to an unprecedented level of power. The initial stages of the Mongol invasion of the Jin, which began in 1211, were met with the expected challenges. The Mongols, for all their prowess in open battle and their improved siege tactics against the Western Xia, encountered a new level of defensive engineering and military organization. Jin cities were massive, with towering walls, deep moats, and well-trained garrisons. These fortifications were designed to withstand prolonged sieges, and the Mongols initially found themselves struggling against such formidable obstacles. Their cavalry, so effective in sweeping across the plains, was less suited for direct assaults on fortified positions. The early engagements were marked by costly attempts to breach city defences, often resulting in heavy casualties for the Mongol forces. Despite their determination and the strategic use of terror and psychological warfare, the Mongols learned that a direct confrontation with the Jin's urban strongholds required even greater innovation and adaptation. This period of the campaign was a testament to the Jin's defensive capabilities and a crucial learning experience for Genghis Khan and his generals, forcing them to evolve their methods of warfare to overcome the challenges of a settled empire. The initial difficulties encountered during the Jin campaign underscored a fundamental characteristic of the Mongol military: its profound capacity for adaptation and innovation. Rather than being deterred by the strong defences of Jin cities, Genghis Khan and his commanders embraced the challenge, demonstrating a remarkable pragmatism. They understood that traditional steppe warfare, reliant on speed and manoeuvrability, would not suffice against the advanced fortifications of a settled empire. The Mongols, despite their origins as a nomadic people, were not bound by rigid traditions when it came to military technology. They possessed an acute willingness to learn from their adversaries and from the peoples they conquered. This led to a deliberate and systematic integration of foreign expertise into their military structure. Engineers, artisans, and specialists from captured cities and territories, particularly from the more technologically advanced Western Xia and later the Jin themselves, were not simply enslaved, but often pressed into service. Their knowledge of siege engines, construction techniques, and even gunpowder technology, though rudimentary by later standards, became invaluable. Siege warfare for the Mongols evolved rapidly. They began to employ a diverse array of equipment, including powerful trebuchets capable of hurling massive stones or incendiary materials, and scaling ladders and battering rams. These were often constructed on site, using local materials and the forced labour of captured populations or conscripted peasants. The speed with which these machines could be assembled and deployed was often a surprise to their enemies. Beyond the physical tools, the Mongols also refined their siege tactics. They mastered the art of encirclement, cutting off supply lines and starving out garrisons. They employed psychological warfare, often offering terms of surrender that, if rejected, would lead to brutal reprisals, thus encouraging defection or capitulation. They also became adept at diverting rivers to flood cities or tunnelling beneath walls, showcasing a comprehensive approach to overcoming fortified positions. This pragmatic adoption and masterful application of diverse technologies and strategies transformed the Mongol army into an even more versatile and formidable force, capable of conquering both open steppes and heavily defended urban centres. The culmination of these refined strategies and technological adaptations was the capture of Zhongdu, the illustrious capital of the Jin dynasty. This city, known today as Beijing, represented the very heart of Jin power and culture, a sprawling metropolis fortified with imposing walls and a vast population. Its fall was not merely a military victory, it was a profound psychological blow that reverberated throughout East Asia. The siege of Zhongdu was a protracted affair, a testament to the city's formidable defences and the Jin's initial determination to resist. However, the relentless Mongol pressure, coupled with their mastery of siegecraft and their ability to cut off all external relief, gradually wore down the defenders. Inside the walls, starvation and disease began to take a heavy toll, eroding the morale of both soldiers and civilians. The Jin emperor, feeling the immense pressure, eventually abandoned his capital, fleeing south to Kaifeng in 1214, a move that further demoralized the remaining garrison. With the emperor gone, the city's fate was sealed. In the spring of 1215, Zhongdu finally capitulated to the Mongol forces. The scale of this victory was immense. The capture of such a grand and strategically vital city demonstrated unequivocally that the Mongol Empire was not merely a threat to border regions, but a power capable of dismantling the most established and advanced empires. The immediate aftermath for Zhongdu was one of immense destruction and suffering. Historical accounts describe widespread looting, burning, and the loss of countless lives. The city, once a vibrant centre of commerce and administration, was left in ruins, a stark symbol of Mongol might and the consequences of prolonged resistance. While the Mongols did not immediately occupy the city in a permanent administrative sense, its devastation served as a chilling warning to other potential adversaries. The fall of Zhongdu cemented Genghis Khan's reputation as an unstoppable force, fundamentally altering the political landscape of the region and ushering in a new era of Mongol dominance. Following the significant victory against the Jin dynasty, the focus of Mongol expansion began to shift westward. As this strategic pivot was driven by several interconnected factors, primarily the persistent threat posed by a figure named Kuchlug, a Naiman prince. The Naiman were one of the last major nomadic confederations to resist Genghis Khan's unification of the steppe, and after their defeat, Kuchlug had fled westward. He sought refuge and eventually seized control of the Kara Khitan Khanate, an empire that stretched across Central Asia. From this new base, Kuchlug began to actively persecute the local Muslim population and challenge the authority of neighbouring states, creating instability on the Mongol Empire's western flank. Genghis Khan viewed Kuchlug not just as a fugitive, but as a destabilising element, a potential rallying point for future opposition, and a direct threat to the security of his burgeoning empire. The pursuit of Kuchlug thus became a critical objective, extending the Mongol sphere of influence deeper into Central Asia. This campaign was also strategically important for securing the vast western territories that were now part of the Mongol domain. A secure western border would allow for the unhindered flow of trade and communication, and prevent any future incursions from that direction. In 1218, Genghis Khan dispatched Yebe, one of his most skilled generals, with a relatively small but highly effective force to deal with Kuchlug. Yebe's approach was characterized by speed and psychological warfare. He presented himself as a liberator to the oppressed Muslim populations under Kuchlug's rule, promising religious freedom and relief from persecution. This strategy garnered local support and intelligence, and significantly aiding the Mongol advance. Kuchlug, isolated and unpopular, was eventually hunted down and killed. With his elimination, the Karakitan Khanate effectively dissolved, its territories becoming integrated into the Mongol Empire. This expansion westward brought the Mongols into direct contact with the powerful Khwarezmian Empire, setting the stage for the next monumental phase of conquest. The securing of the western flank was complete, but it inadvertently opened the door to even grander ambitions. With the western border secured and the Kara-Khitan Khanate absorbed, the Mongol Empire found itself a direct neighbour to the powerful Khwarezmian Empire. This realm, stretching across Persia and Central Asia, was then ruled by Sultan Muhammad II. Initially, and Genghis Khan harboured no immediate hostile intentions towards the Khwarezmians. His primary interest lay in establishing peaceful trade relations, fostering economic prosperity, and securing access to the lucrative Silk Road routes that traversed Khwarezmian territory. In pursuit of these objectives, Genghis Khan dispatched a diplomatic caravan to the Khwarezmian court. This initial embassy was intended to convey a message of peace and a desire for mutual prosperity, outlining the benefits of open trade between their two vast empires. The caravan carried valuable goods, demonstrating the wealth and the potential for commerce that the Mongols could offer. It was a gesture of goodwill aimed at forging a stable and profitable relationship. However, the Khwarezmian Sultan Muhammad II, and perhaps viewing the Mongols as uncivilized barbarians or underestimating their power, harboured deep suspicions. His empire was at the peak of its strength, and he may have seen the Mongols' overtures as a sign of weakness or a prelude to invasion. This distrust was tragically amplified by the actions of Inalchuk, the governor of Otrar, a prominent city on the Khwarezmian frontier. Upon the arrival of the Mongol trade caravan at Otrar, Inalchuk, acting either on his own initiative or with the implicit approval of the Sultan, accused the Mongol envoys of being spies. He ordered the entire caravan to be seized, their goods confiscated, and most grievously all the Mongol merchants and the chief envoy were summarily executed. Only one camel driver reportedly escaped to carry the horrifying news back to Genghis Khan. This act of profound disrespect and outright aggression was an unforgivable affront in the Mongol worldview. The murder of envoys was a violation of ancient steppe customs and a universal diplomatic taboo. For Genghis Khan, who valued loyalty and honour above all else, this was not merely an incident but a direct challenge, a personal insult, and a clear signal of the Khwarezmian Sultan's contempt. The incident at Otrar ignited a spark that would soon engulf the Khwarezmian Empire in a devastating conflict, altering the course of Central Asian history irrevocably. The outrage at Otrar, and the subsequent execution of a second Mongol envoy sent to demand justice, left Genghis Khan with no alternative but war. This was not merely a punitive expedition, it was to be a campaign of unprecedented scale. He aimed at dismantling the Khwarezmian Empire entirely. In 1219, Genghis Khan personally led his armies westward, embarking on what would become known as the Great Western Campaign. The force assembled for this invasion was immense. Estimates vary, but it is believed that between 100,000 and 200,000 Mongol warriors, along with their auxiliary troops and siege engineers, moved across the vast Central Asian steppes. This was a logistical marvel, requiring meticulous planning to sustain such a large army far from its homeland. Supply lines were carefully managed, and the army's inherent self-sufficiency, with each soldier carrying their own provisions and spare horses, allowed for remarkable speed and endurance. The Mongol advance was swift and relentless. They moved with a fluidity that bewildered their opponents. Unlike traditional armies that relied on fixed supply depots and slower infantry, the Mongol cavalry could cover vast distances rapidly, striking targets before defences could be fully organised. Their strategy often involved dividing their forces into multiple columns, converging on key cities from different directions, creating widespread panic and confusion. The initial target was Otrar itself, the city where the envoys had been murdered. While a portion of the army besieged Otrar, other divisions swiftly bypassed it, pushing deeper into Khwarezmian territory. This allowed the Mongols to isolate cities and prevent the Khwarezmian forces from consolidating. The sheer speed of their movement was a weapon in itself, shattering the morale of the defenders and leaving them little time to react effectively. The Khwarezmian Empire, yet accustomed to more conventional warfare, was simply unprepared for an enemy that moved like the wind and struck with such overwhelming force. The Great Western Campaign had begun, a testament to Mongol strategic genius and military might. Following the initial breach of Khwarezmian defences, the Mongol armies continued their systematic advance, targeting the empire's most prominent urban centres. The capture of Bukhara, a renowned centre of Islamic learning and trade, unfolded in the spring of 1220. The city's inhabitants, witnessing the overwhelming force of the Mongols, chose to surrender after a relatively brief siege. Genghis Khan himself entered Bukhara, gathering its elders and prominent citizens in the main mosque. There he delivered a speech, reminding them of the Khwarezmian Shah's perceived transgressions and asserting his own divine mandate. While the city's common people were largely spared immediate slaughter upon surrender, the process of conquest was brutal. The Mongols systematically looted Bukhara, seizing its wealth and resources. Skilled artisans and craftsmen were often deported to Mongolia, destined to serve the needs of the burgeoning empire. Others were conscripted into labour battalions, forced to fill moats or operate siege engines against their own people in future assaults. This deliberate policy served to both enrich the Mongols and weaken the conquered population, ensuring their compliance through fear and displacement. Next, the Mongol gaze turned towards Samarkand, the capital city of the Khwarezmian Empire, a city famed for its immense size and formidable fortifications. Shah Muhammad II had garrisoned a large force within its walls, hoping to withstand the Mongol onslaught. However, the Mongols employed their characteristic tactics, a combination of overwhelming force, psychological warfare and sophisticated siegecraft. They used captured populations as human shields, and their engineers tirelessly worked to breach the city's defences. The siege of Samarkand was fierce but ultimately brief, lasting only a few days. The inner citadel, still holding out, was eventually overwhelmed. The fall of Samarkand was even more devastating than that of Bukhara. Its population was subjected to a thorough and ruthless culling, with many thousands put to the sword. The city itself was largely razed, its magnificent buildings reduced to rubble, This catastrophic destruction served as a stark message to any other cities contemplating resistance. The systematic nature of these conquests, the swiftness of their execution, and the profound terror they inspired became defining characteristics of the Mongol invasion. While the major cities of the Khwarezmian Empire fell, Shah Muhammad II, the architect of the conflict, remained at large. His continued existence posed a symbolic threat, a rallying point for potential resistance, and a personal affront to Genghis Khan. Thus, a special detachment of Mongol forces was tasked with his capture. This critical mission was entrusted to two of Genghis Khan's most skilled and formidable generals, Jibi and Subutai. These two commanders, leading a force of approximately 20,000 cavalry, and thus embarked on what would become one of history's most extraordinary pursuits. Their objective was not merely to defeat an army, but to track down and apprehend a single individual across an immense and diverse landscape. Shah Muhammad, accompanied by a dwindling retinue, fled westward, hoping to find refuge and rebuild his shattered forces. The chase began in the spring of 1220, taking Jebi and Subutai across the vast plains of Persia, through rugged mountain passes and over arid deserts. The Mongol cavalry, with their multiple horses per rider, their ability to subsist on limited provisions, and their unparalleled endurance, were perfectly suited for such a relentless pursuit. They moved with astonishing speed, covering distances that would have been impossible for any other army of the era. Shah Muhammad, as constantly looking over his shoulder, found no safe haven. Every city he approached either fell to the Mongols shortly after his arrival or refused him entry, fearing the inevitable Mongol retribution. His authority had evaporated, and his former subjects now saw him as a harbinger of destruction. The relentless pressure from Jebe and Subutai allowed him no respite, no time to regroup or strategize. The pursuit eventually led to the Caspian Sea. Shah Muhammad, exhausted and isolated, sought refuge on a small island off the coast, near the present-day city of Baku. It was there, in December 1220, that his arduous flight concluded. He died on the island not by Mongol hand in battle, but of pleurisy, a lonely end for a ruler who had once commanded a vast empire. Jeb and Subutai, having fulfilled their primary objective, Yezzis would not cease their remarkable westward journey, continuing their reconnaissance and campaigns into the Caucasus and beyond. With the Khwarezmian Shah Muhammad II no longer a threat, the Mongol detachment under Jebe and Subutai, having traversed the Caspian region, did not immediately return eastward. Instead, they continued their westward reconnaissance, pressing into the territories of the Caucasus. They engaged and defeated Georgian and Kipchak forces, gathering intelligence on the lands and peoples beyond the Khwarezmian Empire. This journey of exploration and conquest eventually brought them to the vast steppes north of the Black Sea, lands inhabited by various nomadic groups and bordering the nascent Rus principalities. The presence of the Mongols in these distant lands was an unprecedented and unsettling development for the local powers. The Cumans, a Turkic nomadic people who had long dominated the Pontic steppe, found themselves directly in the path of this new, formidable force. Recognizing the existential threat, the Cuman Khan Kutan appealed to the Rus' princes for aid, forming an alliance against the common enemy. In the spring of 1223, a large coalition of Rus' forces, led by Mstislav the Bold of Garlich, Mstislav III of Kiev, and other princes, gathered their armies. They united with the Cuman cavalry, creating a substantial combined force, confident in their numbers and their martial traditions. They advanced eastward, seeking to confront the Mongol vanguard. Jebe and Subutai, despite being significantly outnumbered, employed their characteristic strategic cunning. They initially feigned retreat, drawing the overconfident Rus and Cuman forces deeper into the steppe, away from their supply lines and familiar territory. This tactic, a classic Mongol maneuver, served to stretch the enemy's formations and create a false sense of security. The two armies finally clashed on May 31st, 1223, on the banks of the Kalka River, a small waterway flowing into the Sea of Azov. The Rus and Cuman forces, disorganized by the pursuit and lacking unified command, advanced piecemeal. The Mongols then turned, launching a devastating counterattack. Their superior archery, disciplined cavalry charges, and coordinated movements systematically overwhelmed the Allied forces. The battle resulted in a catastrophic defeat for the Rus and Cumans. Many princes were killed, and their armies were shattered. This encounter at the Kalka River marked the first direct engagement between Mongol and European forces, a shocking introduction to the effectiveness of Mongol warfare. Having achieved a decisive victory and gathered invaluable intelligence, Jebi and Subutai then turned their forces eastward, beginning their long journey back to rejoin Genghis Khan, leaving behind a profound and lasting impression of their military prowess. The campaign against the Khwarezmian Empire left a profound and enduring scar across Central Asia. What had once been a prosperous and culturally vibrant realm, dotted with magnificent cities and thriving trade routes, was systematically laid waste. Cities like Urgench, Merv, Nishapur and Herat, centres of learning and commerce for centuries, suffered unimaginable destruction. Their populations were decimated through massacres, forced displacement or enslavement, and their architectural marvels reduced to rubble. The intricate irrigation systems that had sustained agriculture in arid regions, a testament to centuries of human ingenuity, were deliberately destroyed or fell into disrepair due to the loss of labour and administrative oversight. This had long-term ecological consequences, turning fertile lands into barren wastes in some areas and disrupting food production for generations. The economic infrastructure of the region was shattered, and the flow of goods along the Silk Road was severely disrupted, though it would eventually revive under Mongol patronage. The Khwarezmian state as an independent entity ceased to exist. Its ruling dynasty was extinguished, its administrative structures were dismantled. The territory, stretching from the Aral Sea to the Persian Gulf, was absorbed into the burgeoning Mongol Empire. This vast expanse of land, once a buffer between the nomadic steppes and the settled empires to the west, now became an integral part of Mongol dominion. This consolidation of Mongol control over Central Asia was a pivotal moment. It secured the western flank of the empire and opened new avenues for further expansion. The region, though devastated, would eventually become a crucial link in the vast Mongol communication and trade networks, facilitating the movement of people, goods, and ideas across Eurasia. For the inhabitants who survived, the memory of the Mongol invasion became a foundational trauma, shaping the cultural and historical narratives of the region for centuries. The ferocity and efficiency of the Mongol war machine had not only toppled an empire, but had irrevocably altered the demographic, economic and political landscape of a significant portion of the world. The legacy of this destruction would linger, a silent testament to the raw power unleashed by Genghis Khan. After years of relentless campaigning in the west, Genghis Khan finally turned his gaze eastward, towards the familiar landscapes of his homeland. His return to Mongolia was not merely a journey. It was a testament to an unprecedented transformation. He had departed as the leader of a burgeoning empire, but he returned as the architect of a realm that stretched across the heart of the Eurasian continent. The journey back was a slow, deliberate procession, allowing the vast Mongol forces to move at a measured pace. They traversed the immense distances, crossing mountains and steppes that had once marked the very edges of their known world, now firmly under their control. The return itself was a quiet triumph, devoid of the overt fanfare of settled empires, yet imbued with a profound sense of accomplishment. The empire that Genghis Khan now commanded was of a scale previously unimaginable. Its borders extended from the shores of the Pacific Ocean in the east, encompassing the fertile plains of northern China, across the vast steppes of Mongolia and Central Asia, all the way to the Caspian Sea in the west. This immense territory represented a staggering achievement of military organization, logistical planning, and strategic vision. Upon his return, the Great Khan surveyed an empire that was both immense and diverse, encompassing numerous peoples, whole cultures, and landscapes. The years of warfare had reshaped the geopolitical map, establishing the Mongols as the dominant power across a vast swathe of the world. His presence in the heart of Mongolia, the spiritual and political centre of this new order, solidified the perception of his unchallengeable authority. This return marked a period of relative peace and consolidation within the central lands of the empire. It allowed for a renewed focus on internal administration, the codification of laws, and the organisation of the vast territories now under Mongol rule. The initial explosive phase of westward expansion had concluded, and the architect of this grand design was once again among his people, having indelibly altered the course of history. But the familiar winds of the steppe now blew across an empire of unparalleled size and influence. With the vast territories now under Mongol dominion, Genghis Khan's focus in his later years shifted from pure conquest to the intricate challenges of governance. The sheer scale of the empire demanded sophisticated administrative solutions to maintain cohesion and control across such immense distances. This period saw the systematic development of institutions designed to bind the disparate parts of the realm into a functional whole. One of the most remarkable innovations was the establishment of the YAM, the Imperial Postal Relay System. This network consisted of a meticulously organised series of relay stations spaced at regular intervals across the empire. At each station, fresh horses and provisions were kept ready, allowing messengers to travel at astonishing speeds, transmitting orders, intelligence, and diplomatic communications. The YAM was the nervous system of the empire, ensuring that the Great Khan's directives could reach the furthest provinces with relative swiftness, and that information from those distant lands could flow back to the centre. It was a vital tool for centralised authority, allowing for rapid response to local disturbances or external threats. Alongside the YAM, Genghis Khan initiated comprehensive census-taking. This was not merely an academic exercise, but a practical necessity for effective governance. These censuses meticulously recorded populations, households, and resources within each region. The data collected was crucial for the fair and efficient assessment of taxes, the conscription of soldiers when needed, and the overall management of the empire's human and material assets. It provided the central administration with a clear picture of its holdings, enabling more informed decision-making. Furthermore, a standardized system of taxation was gradually implemented. Prior to the Mongol Empire, various local tribute systems had existed. Genghis Khan sought to rationalize this, establishing more uniform levies that were predictable and, in theory, less arbitrary. Taxes were typically collected in kind, such as livestock, grain, or manufactured goods, reflecting the diverse economies of the conquered regions. This revenue was essential for maintaining the imperial court, funding the military, and sustaining the vast administrative apparatus. These administrative innovations, the YAM, the census, and the tax systems, were fundamental to the long-term stability and continued operation of the Mongol Empire. They demonstrated Genghis Khan's pragmatic understanding that military might alone was insufficient to sustain such a grand political entity. Effective communication, accurate information, and a reliable revenue stream were equally critical for the enduring control of his vast and diverse domains. Beyond the practicalities of administration, Genghis Khan also implemented a distinctive policy regarding religious beliefs within his burgeoning empire. This was a policy of remarkable religious tolerance, especially when viewed against the backdrop of many contemporary civilizations where religious uniformity was often enforced, and dissent could lead to severe persecution. The Mongols themselves traditionally practiced Tengrism, a shamanistic faith centered on the worship of the eternal blue sky, Tengri. Yet, as their empire expanded, they encountered a vast array of faiths: Buddhism, Islam, Christianity, Nestorian and Orthodox, Judaism, and various animistic beliefs. Rather than attempting to impose their own spiritual traditions, Genghis Khan adopted a pragmatic and inclusive approach. This tolerance was not necessarily born of deep theological conviction, but rather from a shrewd understanding of governance and stability. Forcing conversion or persecuting religious minorities could breed resentment, rebellion, and instability, undermining the very unity the empire sought to achieve. By allowing conquered peoples to continue practicing their ancestral religions, Genghis Khan removed a significant source of potential conflict and facilitated their integration into the broader Mongol dominion. Religious leaders and institutions were often granted exemptions from taxation and forced labor, a privilege that further encouraged loyalty and cooperation from diverse communities. This policy attracted skilled individuals from various religious backgrounds who could contribute to the empire's administration, trade, and cultural development. Scholars, artisans, and merchants, regardless of their faith, found a degree of protection and opportunity under Mongol rule that might have been absent elsewhere. The Great Khan's court itself became a fascinating melting pot of beliefs. Buddhist monks, Muslim imams, Christian priests, and Taoist masters were all present, sometimes even engaging in debates and discussions. While Genghis Khan himself remained true to his ancestral Tengrism, he listened to the advice and perspectives of adherents from other faiths, demonstrating an open-mindedness that was rare for a ruler of his era. This policy of religious freedom was enshrined in the Yasa, the Mongol code of law, which explicitly forbade discrimination based on faith. It was a foundational principle that helped to pacify newly conquered territories and foster a sense of belonging among diverse populations. This approach contrasted sharply with the religious wars and persecutions that often characterized medieval Europe and other parts of Asia, distinguishing the Mongol Empire as a realm where, at least in principle, one's spiritual convictions did not preclude one's place within the imperial structure. The establishment of the Mongol Empire was not merely a matter of military conquest. It was also predicated upon the creation and enforcement of a comprehensive legal framework known as the Yasa. This foundational code, largely compiled and promulgated by Genghis Khan himself, served as the bedrock for the empire's internal order and cohesion. While often described as a secret code known only to the imperial family and a select few, its principles were widely understood and applied across the vast territories under Mongol control. The Yasa was designed to regulate every aspect of Mongol life, from military discipline to civil conduct, ensuring a degree of uniformity and predictability across a diverse and geographically expansive realm. Its principles emphasized absolute loyalty to the Khan and the state, a strict adherence to military commands, and an uncompromising stance against theft, adultery, and lying. These were not merely abstract ideals. Transgressions were met with swift and often severe punishment, reflecting a society that prioritized collective order over individual transgression. One of the central tenets of the Yasa was the principle of equality before the law, at least among Mongols. Rank and status did not absolve an individual from accountability. This concept, revolutionary for its time, fostered a sense of shared responsibility and discouraged internal feuding, which had plagued the steppe tribes for generations. it also created a meritocratic system within the military and administration, where ability and loyalty were valued above aristocratic birth. For the vast array of conquered peoples, the Asa often operated alongside existing local laws and customs, particularly in matters of civil law. However, in cases that touched upon imperial security, trade, or the maintenance of public order, the Asa's authority was paramount. It provided a common legal language and a framework for dispute resolution that transcended cultural and linguistic barriers, thereby facilitating the integration of disparate groups into a single, functioning empire. The Yasa also codified aspects of Mongol social behavior, such as hospitality, the sharing of resources, and respect for elders. While these were traditional nomadic values, their inclusion in the imperial law elevated them to a universal standard for all subjects. This legal consistency was instrumental in binding together a sprawling empire, offering a sense of shared identity and purpose that extended far beyond the battlefield. It was a testament to Genghis Khan's vision, not only as a conqueror, but as a legislator who understood the power of law to forge a lasting legacy. As Genghis Khan neared the end of his extraordinary life, his thoughts turned with practical foresight to the continuation of the vast empire he had forged. Understanding the potential for discord and disunion that often follows the death of a powerful leader, he meticulously planned for his succession, a critical step to ensure the stability and longevity of the Mongol state. This planning involved both the division of territories among his sons and the crucial designation of a single successor to the highest office of Great Khan. In accordance with nomadic tradition, the empire was to be divided into distinct appanages known as ulus, for each of his 4 primary sons by his first wife, Berta. These were not independent kingdoms, but rather administrative divisions, each son receiving a portion of the empire to govern, along with their respective military forces and subjects. Yochi, the eldest, was allocated the westernmost territories, encompassing parts of Siberia and the lands north of the Aral Sea, which would later form the core of the Golden Horde. Chagatai received Central Asia, including Transoxiana and the Ili River region. Tolui, the youngest son, in keeping with Mongol custom, inherited the ancestral Mongol heartland, along with the bulk of the main Mongol army. However, the division of land did not imply the division of supreme authority. Genghis Khan understood that a unified head was essential to prevent the fragmentation of his grand design. Thus, he made the deliberate and carefully considered decision to designate his 3rd son, Ögedei, as his successor to the title of Great Khan, or Kagan. This choice was not based on birth order, as Yochi was the eldest, but rather on Ögedei's perceived diplomatic skills, his ability to mediate among his brothers, and his capacity for sound governance. Genghis Khan had observed Ögedei's temperament and judgment over many years, recognizing in him the qualities necessary to hold together such a diverse and expansive dominion. This decision was formally declared during the Hurultai, a great assembly of Mongol nobles and military commanders. The designation of Ögedei as the paramount leader, overseeing the other ulus, was a testament to Genghis Khan's strategic thinking. He sought to create a system where his sons would govern their respective territories while remaining ultimately subservient to the Great Khan, thereby maintaining the empire's overarching unity and preventing internecine warfare. This careful succession planning was a direct attempt to mitigate the historical pattern of empires collapsing upon the death of their founders, a testament to Genghis Khan's enduring vision for a unified Mongol world. The groundwork for a relatively smooth transition of power was thus carefully laid. Despite his advanced age and the comprehensive arrangements made for the future of his empire, Genghis Khan embarked on one final military campaign. This expedition was directed once more against the Tangut state of Western Sia, a kingdom situated to the southeast of the Mongol heartlands. The decision to undertake this final war was rooted in a history of defiance and perceived betrayal by the Western Jia rulers. For many years, the Western Jia had been a vassal state of the Mongol Empire, obligated to provide military aid and tribute. However, during the crucial campaigns against the Khwarezmian Empire in the west, the Western Jia had failed to honour their commitments, refusing to send troops when requested. This act was seen by Genghis Khan not merely as a breach of alliance, but as a direct challenge to his authority and a profound insult to the burgeoning Mongol order. Such insubordination, in his view, could not be left unpunished, for it risked undermining the very foundation of Mongol suzerainty over its numerous client states. Thus, in the year 1226, Genghis Khan, now in his early 60s, personally led his army south for a punitive expedition. This was not a campaign of expansion in the same vein as his earlier conquests, but rather a decisive reassertion of Mongol dominance. The objective was clear: to crush the Western Jia completely and send an unequivocal message to any other vassal state contemplating rebellion. The campaign proceeded with the methodical efficiency that had become a hallmark of Mongol warfare. Genghis Khan's forces systematically besieged and captured a series of Western Jia cities, including the important stronghold of Lingwu. The Tangut resistance, though sometimes fierce, was ultimately insufficient to withstand the sustained pressure of the Mongol military machine. Rivers were crossed, fortifications were breached, and the landscape bore the marks of a determined and relentless advance. As the campaign unfolded, Genghis Khan himself continued to direct the operations with his characteristic strategic acumen. He oversaw the movements of his tumans, the deployment of siege engines, and the coordination of his commanders. The harsh conditions of the campaign, however, began to take their toll on the aging leader. The precise details remain somewhat veiled by historical accounts, but it is understood that his health, already declining, was further challenged by the rigours of military life on the steppe. This final act of war, therefore, was not only a reassertion of power, but also the last significant exertion of a life defined by military leadership and the relentless pursuit of order and dominance. The destruction of Western Jia was to be the final chapter in his military legacy. As the final campaign against the Western Jia continued, a profound shift began to occur in the health of Genghis Khan. The relentless pace of the military expedition, combined with the natural progression of age, started to take an undeniable toll on the seasoned warrior. Though his mind remained sharp, his physical resilience was visibly diminishing. The precise circumstances surrounding his final illness are not definitively known, and have been subject to various interpretations throughout history. One common account suggests that he suffered a fall from his horse during a hunting expedition, an activity he pursued with vigour even in his later years. Such an accident, particularly for an elderly man, even could have led to severe internal injuries or complications that would prove fatal. Another historical perspective posits that he may have contracted a fever or an infectious disease, perhaps typhus, which was prevalent in the region and often spread rapidly among large encampments. The unsanitary conditions that could accompany a prolonged military campaign would have made such an illness particularly dangerous, especially for someone whose immune system was naturally weakening with age. Regardless of the exact medical cause, the narrative consistently describes a quiet fading. There was no dramatic battle wound, no sudden violent end on the field of combat. Instead, the great conqueror, who had shaped so much of the world through his formidable will and military genius, slowly succumbed to the vulnerabilities of the human body. His illness progressed while the campaign was still underway, casting a sombre shadow over the Mongol command. The leader who had always been at the forefront, inspiring his troops with his presence and strategic brilliance, was now confined, his energy ebbing. The exact location of his final decline is often cited as being near the Liupan Mountains, a region known for its rugged terrain and variable climate. During this period, his sons and trusted generals were likely by his side, observing the gradual departure of the man who'd unified them and forged an empire. The focus of the campaign continued, driven by the momentum he had initiated, yet a profound sense of anticipation and sorrow would have settled over the Mongol leadership, where the Titan who had dominated the known world for decades was now quietly yielding to the inevitable forces of nature. His final days were spent not in glorious battle, but in a gradual retreat from life, surrounded by the echoes of his last conquest. In August of the year 1227, the long and transformative life of Genghis Khan reached its quiet conclusion. The exact date remains debated among historians, but the fact of his passing during the final stages of the Western Jia campaign is consistently recorded. His death occurred in the field amidst the ongoing military operations, a setting that had defined so much of his existence. The moment of his death was marked by a profound solemnity and an immediate, carefully enforced secrecy. The Mongol leadership understood the immense psychological impact such news could have, as both on their own forces and on their adversaries. To reveal the death of the great Khan prematurely might demoralize their troops, encourage rebellion among conquered peoples, and embolden remaining enemies. Thus, a veil of silence was drawn around the event. Orders were swiftly issued to maintain strict secrecy. The campaign against the Western Jia continued unabated, with the outward appearance that Genghis Khan was still at its helm. This deception was crucial for maintaining the strategic advantage and ensuring the successful completion of the current military objectives. The final defeat of the Western Jia capital, Yinchuan, and the complete subjugation of their realm occurred shortly after his death, a testament to the discipline and momentum of the Mongol army, even in the absence of its supreme leader. His body was prepared for a long and discreet journey back to his homeland. The desire for secrecy extended even to his burial, reflecting an ancient nomadic tradition and a personal wish that his final resting place remain undisturbed and unknown. The precise location of his tomb was to be a closely guarded secret, a mystery that endures to this day. The passing of Genghis Khan was not merely the end of a single life, but a pivotal moment in the history of the Mongol Empire. It marked the transition from the era of its founder to the reign of his successors, testing the carefully laid plans for imperial continuity. The empire he had forged, sprawling across vast distances, now faced the challenge of maintaining its unity and purpose without the direct guidance of its visionary architect. A new chapter was beginning, steeped in the legacy of the great Khan. Following the death of Genghis Khan, the journey of his remains back to the Mongolian heartland was conducted with extraordinary measures of secrecy. This was not merely a logistical exercise, but a ritual steeped in ancient nomadic tradition and strategic necessity. The desire was to ensure that his final resting place would remain forever hidden, undisturbed by future generations or potential enemies. The legends surrounding this journey speak of an unparalleled effort to erase any trace of the procession. It is said that the escorting cavalry, upon reaching a suitable burial site, took extreme measures to conceal the grave. Accounts, though often embroidered by time and folklore, suggest that thousands of horses were ridden over the freshly disturbed earth, while trampling the ground until it was indistinguishable from the surrounding steppe. Trees were reputedly planted over the site, or even a river diverted to flow over the grave, further obscuring its location. Those involved in the immediate burial, it is further recounted, were themselves silenced. Each person who knew the precise location was said to have been killed by the next group of soldiers, in a grim chain designed to eliminate all witnesses. The final group of soldiers then returned to their encampments, carrying the secret only in their minds, if even that. While these specific details may belong more to legend than documented fact, they powerfully illustrate the profound commitment to absolute secrecy. This tradition of a secret burial was rooted in a practical desire to prevent desecration by enemies and a spiritual belief that an undisturbed resting place would allow the spirit of the deceased to rest peacefully. For a figure as monumental as Genghis Khan, whose life had been one of constant conquest and transformation, the need for such protection was seen as paramount. To this day, the true location of Genghis Khan's tomb remains one of history's great unsolved mysteries. Numerous expeditions have attempted to find it, using modern technology and ancient texts, yet the vast, undulating landscape of Mongolia has held its secret steadfastly. This enduring enigma only adds to the mystique of Genghis Khan, allowing his spirit to loom large over the land he once unified. While his physical resting place remains an untouched, he's silent testament to the power of ancient traditions. With the secret burial completed and the immediate aftermath of Genghis Khan's passing carefully managed, a period of temporary stillness descended upon the vast Mongol Empire. The ongoing military campaigns, particularly those against the defiant Western Xia, were paused. This halt was a deliberate and strategic decision, allowing the Mongol leadership to consolidate its position and prepare for the crucial transition of power. The news of the Great Khan's death, though still guarded, began to ripple through the inner circles, necessitating a formal gathering. The stability of the empire, even in this moment of profound change, was a testament to the foundational structures Genghis Khan had meticulously built. His foresight in establishing a clear line of succession, even if not without its complexities, now proved vital. The Yasa, his codified law, provided a framework for governance and a guide for the actions of his successors. To formalize the transfer of authority, a grand Kurultai was summoned. This traditional Mongol assembly, comprising all the major princes, generals, and tribal leaders, was the supreme decision-making body of the empire. Messengers were dispatched across the vast distances of the Mongol territories, summoning the most influential figures to converge at a designated location, typically a sacred site or a central encampment within the Mongol heartland. The journey for many would have been long and arduous, reflecting the immense scale of the empire. The purpose of this Kurultai was singular and momentous: to formally confirm Ögedei, Genghis Khan's third son, as the new Great Khan. Genghis Khan himself had designated Ögedei as his successor, recognizing his diplomatic skills and ability to mediate among his ambitious brothers. This designation, however, still required the ceremonial endorsement of the Kurultai to solidify his legitimacy and ensure the unity of the Mongol leadership. The convocation of this assembly demonstrated the inherent strength of Genghis Khan's system. Despite the immense power concentrated in his person, he'd created institutions and traditions that could withstand his absence. The Kurultai was not merely a rubber stamp, it was a mechanism through which the collective will of the Mongol elite could be expressed, binding them to the chosen successor and maintaining the cohesion of the empire during a potentially fragile period of transition. The very act of summoning such an assembly underscored the sophisticated political infrastructure that now underpinned the Mongol state. The transition of power following Genghis Khan's death, though managed with utmost care and secrecy, was a pivotal moment. Yet, rather than fracturing, the Mongol Empire not only endured but continued its remarkable trajectory of expansion. This resilience was not accidental. It was a direct consequence of the robust institutions and foundational structures that Genghis Khan had painstakingly established throughout his reign. His creation of a unified legal code, the Yasa, provided a consistent framework for governance and justice across diverse lands and peoples. It transcended tribal loyalties, offering a universal system that helped integrate conquered territories and maintain order within the vast dominion. This legal bedrock meant that the empire's operations did not solely depend on the personal charisma or direct command of a single individual. The highly organized and meritocratic military, another of Genghis Khan's innovations, remained a formidable force. Its structure, based on decimal units and promotions earned through skill and loyalty rather than birthright, ensured its continued effectiveness. Generals and commanders trained in Genghis Khan's strategic principles were prepared to lead campaigns and enforce Mongol authority, even without the Great Khan himself at their head. The military machine, once set in motion, possessed its own powerful momentum. Furthermore, the sophisticated administrative systems, such as the Yam postal relay network, facilitated rapid communication and logistical support across the immense empire. This infrastructure allowed for efficient coordination of military movements, collection of tribute, and dissemination of imperial decrees, binding distant provinces to the central authority. These practical innovations were crucial for managing an empire of such unprecedented size and geographic spread. Genghis Khan's policies of religious tolerance and the strategic integration of skilled individuals from conquered populations also contributed to the empire's stability. By utilizing the talents of administrators, scholars, and artisans from various cultures, the Mongols were able to adapt and refine their governance, making their rule more effective and less prone to internal rebellion. Thus, the empire, rather than collapsing with its founder, continued to thrive. His successors, guided by his vision and operating within the systems he had created, were able to build upon his legacy, pushing the boundaries of the Mongol domain even further into new territories, a testament to the enduring power of the structures he had so carefully laid. The life of Genghis Khan, from his humble and perilous beginnings to his ascent as the founder of an unprecedented empire, represents a period of profound global change. His actions did not merely conquer territories, they fundamentally reshaped the world, leaving an indelible mark on the course of history that resonated for centuries. The most immediate and visible transformation was undoubtedly the redrawing of the world's political map. Vast swathes of Asia, from the Pacific Ocean to Eastern Europe, were brought under a single, albeit sprawling, Mongol authority. Empires and kingdoms that had existed for centuries were swept away, their borders erased, and their identities subsumed or radically altered. This immense geopolitical shift created a new global order, the likes of which had never been seen before. Beyond the rearrangement of political boundaries, Genghis Khan's conquests inadvertently initiated a new era of connectivity. The imposition of Mongol peace, or Pax Mongolica, across such a vast territory, despite its brutal origins, ironically fostered an environment conducive to unprecedented long-distance travel and exchange. The insecurity that had previously fragmented regions gave way to a relatively safe passage along the Silk Roads. This newfound security reinvigorated ancient trade routes, allowing goods, technologies, and ideas to flow with a freedom rarely experienced. Chinese silks, spices from the East, European textiles, and Middle Eastern innovations all traversed the vast Mongol network. Cartographers struggled to keep pace with the shifting realities as new lands and routes became known. Moreover, the Mongol Empire became a conduit for significant cultural exchange. Scholars, artisans, religious figures, and adventurers moved across the empire, sometimes by choice, often by compulsion. This movement led to the cross-pollination of knowledge and practices, influencing art, science, philosophy, and governance across continents. Innovations from one part of the world could now more easily find their way to another, contributing to a broader intellectual and technological synthesis. The very fabric of societies, from their economic systems to their artistic expressions, began to reflect these new connections. From the vastness of its reach emerged a phenomenon known to history as the Pax Mongolica, or the Mongol Peace. This period, though born from conquest and maintained by a formidable military presence, paradoxically ushered in an era of relative stability across much of Eurasia. The sheer scale of Mongol dominion meant that internal conflicts within the empire were largely suppressed, and the threat of Mongol reprisal deterred external aggression against its territories. Within these secure borders, the flow of people, goods, and ideas intensified. Merchants, once wary of fragmented states and banditry, now found relatively safe passage along established routes, protected by Mongol garrisons and the strict enforcement of the Yasa, the Mongol legal code. The ampostal system, originally designed for military communication, also served to facilitate the rapid transmission of messages and information across the empire, further binding distant regions together. This unprecedented security and efficiency greatly stimulated trade. The Silk Roads, which had seen periods of decline and resurgence, now experienced a golden age. Caravans laden with exotic goods traversed continents, connecting markets from China to the Mediterranean. Spices, textiles, precious metals, and intricate crafts moved freely, enriching both the Mongol treasury through taxes and the diverse populations along the trade arteries. Beyond mere commerce, the Pax Mongolica became a powerful engine for cultural exchange. Scholars, scientists, artists, and religious leaders from various traditions found themselves interacting within the vast Mongol sphere. Knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, medicine, and engineering travelled between East and West, leading to significant advancements and innovations in many fields. Techniques for paper-making from China reached the Islamic world, and Arabic numerals eventually found their way to Europe. Different faiths, including Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, and various indigenous beliefs, coexisted under a policy of general religious tolerance, fostering dialogues and mutual influences. This exchange of ideas and technologies was not always harmonious, but its scale and impact were undeniable, laying foundations for later global developments. The Pax Mongolica, therefore, represents a complex legacy, a period of peace and unparalleled connectivity, they forged in the crucible of conquest. The vast Mongol Empire, spanning from the Pacific Ocean to Eastern Europe, created a singular, integrated space where East truly met West on an unprecedented scale. This grand connection was more than just a geographical bridge. It was a conduit for a vibrant and continuous flow of innovations, philosophies, and practical knowledge that profoundly reshaped both hemispheres. From the East, numerous technologies and ideas travelled westward. Chinese printing techniques involving both woodblock and movable type made their way towards the Middle East, fundamentally altering the dissemination of texts and scholarship. Gunpowder, initially a Chinese invention used for fireworks and rudimentary weapons, was adapted and refined by various cultures under Mongol influence, eventually transforming warfare across Eurasia. The compass, vital for navigation, and advanced metallurgical practices also diffused along these pathways. Conversely, Western and Islamic advancements found their way to the east. Persian astronomical tables and medical treatises were translated and studied in China, enriching local scientific understanding. Agricultural techniques and certain crops also crossed these immense distances, enhancing productivity in different regions. The Mongol courts, particularly in the Ilkhanate and the Yuan dynasty, became melting pots where scholars and artisans from diverse backgrounds collaborated, exchanging their specialized knowledge. This cross-cultural fertilization was not limited to material goods or scientific principles. Artistic styles, architectural motifs, and even culinary traditions underwent a subtle intermingling. Chinese landscape painting influenced Persian miniatures, while Islamic geometric patterns appeared in Yuan dynasty ceramics. The very concept of universal knowledge, transcending regional boundaries, gained traction as a direct result of these interactions. The Mongol Empire acted as a powerful catalyst, effectively shrinking the known world by making communication and travel between distant lands more feasible than ever before. This globalized exchange, despite the often violent circumstances of its inception, laid crucial groundwork for the intellectual and technological expansion that would characterize later centuries, bridging civilizations in ways that had been previously unimaginable. While the Mongol Empire undeniably forged connections and facilitated exchanges that reshaped the world, it is equally important to acknowledge the immense human cost that accompanied its expansion. The military campaigns, which established the vast domain, were characterized by widespread destruction and a tragic loss of life across many regions. The initial shock of the Mongol advance often brought with it profound devastation. Cities that resisted were frequently sacked, their population subjected to massacres, and their cultural treasures sometimes destroyed. Historical accounts from the era, though often exaggerated in their precise numbers, consistently describe a pattern of ruthless efficiency and conquest intended to instill terror and discourage further resistance. This strategy, while effective in achieving military objectives, left deep scars on the landscapes and collective memories of the peoples encountered. Regions like Central Asia, Persia, and parts of Eastern Europe experienced dramatic demographic shifts. Entire urban centres, once vibrant hubs of commerce and learning, were reduced to ruins, their sophisticated irrigation systems sometimes deliberately destroyed, rendering agricultural lands barren. The cultural fabric of many societies was torn apart, and generations were impacted by the trauma of invasion and occupation. This aspect of the Mongol legacy cannot be overlooked. It forms an undeniable part of the historical truth, a somber counterpoint to the narratives of connectivity and exchange. The Pax Mongolica, with all its benefits, emerged from a period of intense violence and subjugation, and the stability and trade routes that later flourished were built upon the ashes of earlier civilizations and the suffering of countless individuals. Understanding Genghis Khan's impact requires holding these contrasting realities in balance. The creation of a vast interconnected world, alongside the profound and often brutal cost of its formation. The shadow of conquest remains an enduring and essential element in the complex tapestry of his historical legacy. Beyond the image of a relentless conqueror, Genghis Khan also stands as a remarkable architect of nations. Despite his origins within a fragmented nomadic society, he possessed a profound vision for a unified state, translating that vision into a tangible political entity that transcended the traditional tribal structures of his people. He did not merely conquer, he built. His most enduring creation was the great Mongol nation, an entity forged from disparate tribes and sustained by a sophisticated system of governance. At its core was the Yasa, his code of law, which provided a legal framework for his nascent empire. This set of decrees and prohibitions established order, regulated societal conduct, and defined the rights and responsibilities of his subjects. It was a foundational document outlining principles of justice, military discipline, and the organization of society, all designed to ensure the cohesion and longevity of his new state. The Yasa was revolutionary for its time, moving beyond customary tribal laws to create a universal legal system applicable to all within the Mongol domain. It promoted concepts such as religious tolerance, the protection of envoys, and the importance of loyalty, laying the groundwork for a stable and centrally administered empire. This legal innovation helped to transform a loose confederation of clans into a formidable political power. Furthermore, Genghis Khan understood the necessity of a strong administrative apparatus to manage such a vast territory. He introduced a system of written communication, adapted the Uyghur script for the Mongol language, and fostered literacy to aid in record-keeping and governance. His establishment of a merit-based military and administrative hierarchy, replacing traditional aristocratic privileges, ensured that talent, rather than birth, determined advancement, further strengthening the state's foundations. Thus, Genghis Khan was not just a military genius. He was a strategic statesman who conceived and implemented the institutional structures necessary for a unified and enduring empire. He laid the groundwork for a political entity that would continue to expand and influence global affairs for generations after his passing, a testament to his foresight as a nation builder. The figure of Genghis Khan, centuries after his death, continues to cast a long and complex shadow across historical memory, his legacy interpreted through vastly different cultural lenses. His image is not monolithic. Rather, it is a mosaic of perceptions, each shaped by the historical experiences and national narratives of various peoples. In his homeland of Mongolia, Genghis Khan is revered as the founding father of the nation, a paramount national hero. He's celebrated as the unifier of the Mongol tribes, the visionary who brought forth a unified state from centuries of tribal strife. Statues of him stand majestically across the landscape, and his name is invoked with pride and deep respect. For Mongolians, he symbolizes strength, independence, and the glorious zenith of their historical power. His achievements in establishing a writing system, a legal code, and a vast empire are emphasized, underscoring his role as a bringer of civilization and order to his people. He is seen as the embodiment of Mongolian identity, a source of profound national pride. However, in many other parts of the world, particularly those regions that experience the Mongol invasions directly, his memory is often tinged with fear and devastation. In Central Asia, Persia, and parts of Eastern Europe, Genghis Khan and his armies are remembered primarily for their brutal conquests, the destruction of cities, and the immense loss of life. Historical accounts from these regions often depict him as a ruthless conqueror, a force of nature bringing unparalleled destruction in his wake. The suffering inflicted during the invasions left deep historical scars, shaping a narrative where the Mongols were viewed as invaders rather than nation builders. The differing perspectives highlight the selective nature of historical memory. Where one culture sees a liberator and an architect, another sees an oppressor and a destroyer. These contrasting views are not necessarily contradictory. They reflect the multifaceted reality of his impact. Genghis Khan was indeed a figure of immense power and ambition, capable of both extraordinary unification and devastating violence. His legacy, therefore, remains a subject of ongoing reinterpretation, a powerful reminder of how history is continuously shaped by the present. The historical memory of Genghis Khan thus serves as a mirror, reflecting the values and experiences of those who choose to remember him. Genghis Khan emerges from the annals of history as a figure defined by profound and often startling contradictions. He was a man who embodied opposing forces, a leader whose actions simultaneously brought forth creation and destruction, order and chaos. This duality lies at the very heart of his enduring historical enigma. He was at once a remarkable unifier and a devastating destroyer. His early life was marked by the relentless struggle to forge a cohesive identity among disparate, warring Mongol tribes. Through sheer force of will, strategic brilliance, and the establishment of a meritocratic system, he brought an unprecedented peace and unity to the vast steppes. Yet this unification was often achieved through brutal conquest, and the subsequent expansion of his empire left a trail of immense devastation across continents. Cities were razed, populations decimated, and ancient cultures irrevocably altered. the very act of building his vast empire necessitated widespread destruction, a paradox central to his reign. Furthermore, Genghis Khan was a pragmatic leader, known for his administrative innovations and keen understanding of governance. He established the Yasa, a comprehensive legal code, and implemented a sophisticated postal system, the Yam, facilitating communication across his immense domains. He fostered trade and cultural exchange, inadvertently laying the groundwork for a more interconnected world. Simultaneously, he was a ruthless warrior, capable of making decisions that led to unimaginable suffering. His campaigns were marked by a cold, calculating efficiency, where mercy was often a strategic choice rather than an inherent quality. The swift and brutal punishment of those who defied him was a cornerstone of his authority, ensuring obedience through fear. His journey from a humble orphaned boy named Temujin, struggling for survival in the harsh wilderness, to the ruler of the largest contiguous land empire in history, represents an extraordinary ascent. And this trajectory from obscurity to unprecedented power underscores another contradiction: a man of no inherited status who fundamentally reshaped the world's political landscape. He rose not through lineage or established privilege, but through raw talent, resilience, and an unyielding will. Thus, Genghis Khan stands as a towering figure of contradictions, the architect of an empire built on both innovative governance and brutal force, a unifier who wrought immense destruction, and a man of humble origins who attained unparalleled global influence. These interwoven paradoxes continue to define his complex and enduring legacy. Despite the passage of many centuries, the figure of Genghis Khan continues to hold an enduring grip on the human imagination, a profound enigma that resists simple categorization. His life, his conquests, and his ultimate resting place remain shrouded in layers of mystery, fueling a continuous fascination. One of the most persistent mysteries surrounding him is the secret of his burial. Following his death, his body was returned to Mongolia, and tradition dictates that his burial site was meticulously concealed, with thousands reportedly slain to ensure its secrecy. Rivers were said to have been diverted over the grave, and a vast forest planted, all to erase any trace. To this day, the precise location of his tomb remains undiscovered, a tantalizing historical puzzle that has eluded countless expeditions and researchers. This deliberate act of concealment adds a mythical quality to his end, amplifying the mystique of his existence. The sheer scale of his achievements, from uniting the fragmented Mongol tribes to forging an empire that stretched across Eurasia, is almost incomprehensible. It speaks to a mind of extraordinary strategic depth and an unyielding will. How one man, born into such humble and desperate circumstances, could orchestrate such a profound transformation of the world remains a subject of awe and academic inquiry. His ability to inspire loyalty, enforce discipline, and project power across vast distances stands as a testament to his unique capabilities. Beyond the historical facts and military prowess, it is the sheer force of his personality that continues to captivate. Though direct accounts from his contemporaries are rare, and often filtered through the perspectives of his chroniclers or his enemies, what emerges is the portrait of a leader of immense charisma and an almost superhuman resolve. He was a figure who commanded absolute obedience, who could inspire both fervent devotion and profound terror. This compelling personal presence, transcending time and cultural barriers, ensures that the name Genghis Khan resonates with a power that few historical figures can match. The unanswered questions surrounding his life and death only deepen this enduring fascination. Even as the centuries accumulate, the influence of Genghis Khan, though often subtle, continues to reverberate through the modern world. his colossal impact on the course of history left imprints that can still be discerned in various facets of contemporary life, from geopolitical dynamics to discussions of cultural identity and the enduring study of leadership. In the realm of geopolitics, the ghost of the Mongol Empire's vast reach can still be perceived. The boundaries and cultural landscapes of many modern nations in Central Asia, the Middle East, and Eastern Europe were profoundly shaped by the Mongol invasions. The collapse of existing powers and the subsequent rise of new ones under Mongol rule altered the demographic and political maps in ways that persist. The memory of such a vast unified empire spanning East and West also subtly informs discussions about global connectivity and the potential for large-scale integration, even if the methods differ vastly. For many cultures, particularly in Mongolia, Genghis Khan is not merely a historical figure, but a foundational element of national identity. He is revered as the father of the nation, the unifier who brought disparate tribes together to forge a powerful state. This deep cultural reverence manifests in monuments, national holidays, and a pervasive sense of pride in his legacy. Even in regions that suffered under Mongol conquest, the memory of that period is woven into the historical narrative, shaping collective memory and, in some cases, contributing to a sense of resilience or historical grievance that endures. Furthermore, Genghis Khan's life and the empire he built offer invaluable insights for the study of leadership and empire. Scholars and strategists continue to analyze his military innovations, his organizational genius, and his ability to motivate and control a diverse populace across immense distances. His creation of a meritocratic military, even his sophisticated administrative structures like the Yam postal system, and his early attempts at codifying law in the Yasa provide enduring case studies for understanding how empires are forged, maintained, and ultimately transform societies. His story remains a complex tapestry, illustrating both the destructive power of ambition and the creative force of visionary leadership, offering lessons that, while drawn from a distant past, still echo in the present day. As we reflect upon the life of Genghis Khan, a figure whose deeds profoundly reshaped his world, it becomes apparent that his story is but one powerful current within the immense and ceaseless river of history. This river flows onward, indifferent to the individuals who momentarily ride its surface, carrying them along and then absorbing them back into its depths. Human lives, even those of extraordinary impact, are fleeting moments within this vast expanse, brief flashes against a backdrop of geological time and cosmic indifference. The sheer scale of history can be a humbling contemplation. Eras unfold and vanish, civilizations rise and fall, and countless generations live and die, their names often lost to the sand of time. Within this grand tapestry, individual lives, however significant, occupy but a single thread, contributing to a pattern far greater than themselves. Genghis Khan in his time was a force of nature, an unstoppable tide that swept across continents, leaving an indelible mark. Yet even his phenomenal achievements, his vast empire, and his enduring legacy are, in the grand scheme, finite. The silence of the ages eventually settles over all things. The thunder of hoofbeats, the clamour of battle, the pronouncements of emperors, all fade into a quiet hum, a distant echo. What remains is the slow, steady progression of time, the ceaseless unfolding of events that form the intricate web of our past. Genghis Khan's life serves as a stark reminder of humanity's capacity for both immense creation and profound destruction, a testament to the transformative power one individual can wield. Yet, it also underscores the transient nature of all earthly endeavours when viewed against the backdrop of history's unfathomable depth and breadth. His story, like all others, eventually merges with the collective silence, becoming a part of the vastness that precedes and succeeds us all. Having journeyed through the intricate tapestry of Genghis Khan's existence, from his humble beginnings on the vast step to the commanding heights of empire, we can now allow ourselves a moment of quiet contemplation. The narrative has unfolded, detailing the relentless ascent of Temujin, his transformation into the revered and feared Genghis Khan, and the monumental changes he wrought upon the world. We have observed the forces that shaped him, the decisions he made, and the profound consequences that rippled across continents and down through centuries. Let us consider with a calm and detached perspective the arc of this extraordinary life. The initial struggles, the forging of alliances, the strategic brilliance, and the sheer force of will that united disparate tribes under a single banner. Then, the relentless expansion, the campaigns that redefined the scope of military conquest, and the establishment of an empire unlike any seen before. The rise was swift and formidable, marked by both innovation and devastation. And then, the legacy. The enduring impact that continues to resonate even in our modern world, far removed from the dust and fury of the 13th century. The empire eventually fractured, as all empires ultimately do, but the foundations laid by Genghis Khan proved remarkably resilient, influencing trade routes, cultural exchange, and political structures for generations. His actions initiated a new era, leaving an imprint on the historical record that cannot be overlooked. This journey through his life invites a meditative reflection on the cycles of power, the complexities of leadership, and the persistent human drive to organize, to conquer, and to build. We've observed, rather than judged, either the events of a distant past, allowing the narrative to unfold in its own measured rhythm. The story of Genghis Khan in its entirety stands as a testament to the immense forces that shape history, offering a quiet space for understanding and reflection. The narrative of Genghis Khan, now fully recounted, begins to settle into the vast stillness of time. Each event, each decision, each grand campaign, having been gently laid out, now rests within the quiet expanse of history. The journey through his life, from the desolate plains of his youth to the zenith of his imperial power, has reached its natural conclusion. This comprehensive account is not merely a collection of facts or a chronicle of distant battles. It is a story patiently told, designed to be absorbed at one's own pace, allowing the mind to wander through the landscapes and epochs it describes. The echoes of the Mongol Empire, the strategic brilliance of its founder, and the enduring legacy of his vision now reside within the stillness, available for deeper reflection whenever desired. The life of Genghis Khan, like a river that flows from its source to the sea, has traversed its course. We have followed its meanders, witnessed its rapids, and observed its profound impact on the surrounding terrain. Now the river finds its calm, its waters merging with the boundless ocean of the past. The immediacy of the events fades, replaced by a serene permanence. In this quietude, the grand sweep of his achievements, alongside the stark realities of his methods, can be contemplated without haste. The unification of disparate tribes, the creation of a vast administrative system, the establishment of trade routes that linked east and west. These elements, once vibrant and dynamic, now form part of a static, yet deeply resonant historical record. The story is complete, yet its implications continue to ripple through the fabric of our understanding. It stands as a monumental chapter in the human story, a testament to ambition, resilience, and transformation. As the final words of his tale recede, a sense of peace descends, inviting a tranquil absorption of all that has been shared. The narrative now belongs to the stillness of time, a quiet presence to be reflected upon at leisure, its lessons and wonders awaiting further gentle consideration. As the echoes of Genghis Khan's life gently fade, we're reminded of the profound power held within historical narratives. They possess a unique capacity to transport us across centuries, allowing glimpses into worlds long past, shaping our understanding of the present. These stories, carefully pieced together from fragments of evidence and scholarly inquiry, offer more than just information. They provide a quiet connection to the human experience across time. The past, in its serene authority, holds countless lessons. It speaks not with urgency, but with a steady, unwavering voice, inviting contemplation. Through the lives of figures like Genghis Khan, we observe the enduring patterns of leadership, the complexities of ambition, and the far-reaching consequences of human action. These narratives do not demand immediate answers, but rather encourage a deeper, more patient form of reflection. Each historical account, when absorbed with a calm and open mind, becomes a quiet mentor. It illustrates the ebb and flow of empires, the rise and fall of leaders, and the persistent human drive to organize, to create, and at times to destroy. The subtle wisdom embedded within these chronicles offers a unique perspective on our own fleeting moment in time. In the quiet contemplation of history, the grand narratives of the past merge with the present, offering a gentle reminder of continuity and change. The journey through Genghis Khan's life has been one such exploration, a passage through a pivotal era that continues to resonate. The insights gleaned from such a journey remain, not as burdens, but as quiet companions, enriching our understanding of the vast tapestry of human endeavour. The past, in its quiet authority, continues to offer its timeless lessons, waiting patiently to be heard, and so, justiciable. Our journey through the vast plains of history, guided by the life of Genghis Khan, gently draws to its close. The chronicle of his existence, from the windswept steppes to the establishment of an unparalleled empire, now settles into the stillness of the past. The grand sweep of events, the intricate details of his decisions, and the enduring echoes of his legacy have all been laid out, inviting contemplation and understanding. As these historical narratives recede, leaving behind a sense of quiet fulfillment, we express gratitude for your steady attention. Your presence in this shared exploration of the past has been a calm and welcomed accompaniment. May the insights gathered from this journey linger gently, fostering a sense of peace and a deeper appreciation for the intricate tapestry of human history. Now, as the final words of this account softly dissipate, we wish you a tranquil transition. Whether you drift into the quiet embrace of sleep, allowing these historical echoes to merge with your dreams, or continue in peaceful reflection, may your moments be filled with a profound sense of calm. The weight of the past has been considered, the complexities illuminated, and now a serene quietude awaits. Let the mind unwind from the grand narratives and the distant drums of empire. Allow the stillness to settle, a gentle wave washing over any lingering thoughts. The work of history is done for now, absorbed into the quiet recesses of understanding. May your path forward, whether into slumber or continued wakefulness, be marked by a deep and undisturbed serenity. Farewell, and may peace accompany you.